Everyone, I'm going to call the meeting, the regular meeting of the Nashoba Regional School Committee. Oh, I'm sorry. Good evening, everyone. Is that on? Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 20th regular meeting of the Nashoba Regional School Committee. We will now recite the Pledge of Allegiance. We invite those of you who wish to join us. Participation is voluntary. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Okay, yeah, I see. So just a few words about citizens' comments. At a regular meeting, the citizens' comment period is 15 minutes. We still allow 3 minutes for speakers, and just our usual reminders that this is our business meeting held in public, not a public meeting. We appreciate an opportunity to hear from the public, and it's not an opportunity for discussion. People will have 3 minutes for their comments, and all comments are made through the chair. Improper conduct and remarks will not be allowed. If a speaker persists in such behavior, it's within the purview of the chair to terminate the speaker's privilege to address or order them to leave. And when you come up to address the committee, we need your name and your town. So how many people would like to participate in public comments today? Okay. I would like to, I'm aware of two people that wanted to speak to us. One is Rabbi Mike Rothbaum, who I would invite to come up to the front and speak to us. Mike, would you make Mike, can you make sure the rabbi? It's right there. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh. Hi. Thanks for joining. You could have stayed down there, but welcome. No, sit down. No. We haven't started your 3 minutes yet, so you can sit right there. Thank you for joining us.
Don't roll off.
Okay.
Boy, that would add some excitement. Is this on? Hi.
It is. Okay, so introduce yourself and what town and what you can.
Hi. So, Kathy, my name is Rabbi Michael Rothbaum. I currently live in Maynard, but the reason that you invited me today, which I very much appreciate, is because I'm the rabbi of Congregation Beth Elohim in Acton. We serve congregants all over the Metro West region, not just Acton, but Sudbury, Maynard, and towns in the Nashoba district. Our kids, we have a fantastic religious school and teen program filled with wonderful kids who are a lot like all the other kids in the district. They have active social lives. They love sports. The difference is that they have this place called the synagogue, which is a connection for them. And the other difference is that they don't celebrate the same holidays that the Christian kids do. They love their Christian friends. They have a great time together. But when the Christian kids have Easter time and Christmas time, they know that their friends are going to have time to celebrate their holidays with family. Maybe family will be coming in from out of town. Maybe it'll be a time for them all to be together. The Jewish kids don't know that they're going to have the same privileges. Mm-hmm. Holidays like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Passover, which are not as well known to a lot of people, are also holidays where people come in from out of town. They're family holidays. They're also, even for people who are not religious, cultural celebrations. And I've heard, in addition to all the struggles that kids have today in a crazy world, our kids worry about having tests on Yom Kippur or having the biggest field trip happens on Rosh Hashanah. There's not an understanding of what their dietary needs would be for Passover. And we also know in a diverse world that we have kids who are Sikh and Muslim and Hindu. And all of them deserve to have their religious celebrations respected. We did just say the pledge, which said under God. We didn't say what kind of God. Everybody's got a different conception of God. Everybody's got, in an increasingly diverse world, different conceptions of what a religious holiday is. I know you're struggling right now with some complicated problems. This one is pretty easy. You say, these days that you need, you get off the way that the days that we need, we get off for. In a complicated world, it's nice to have an easy solution, to know that you have respect for all of the different types of religious and cultural expressions in your district. Well, you'll feel really good about that, and I know we'll appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. I also heard from some folks who perhaps wanted to speak about full day K. Is there anyone here tonight to speak to full day K? Yes. Please approach. You can stay down there. We'll hand you the mic. How's that? Oh, come up in the front, though. Mike will give you the mic.
So my name is Don Lowe. I'm the Bolton Town Administrator. And yes, I'm here to speak about free full day K. Last year, the board, after it was discovered that an additional $300,000 had become available, voted to apply that towards the, I'll say, the expediting of free full day K, and you mapped out a schedule for that. And I thought that was a reasonable compromise. There's an additional sum of money, about $219,000, that has been discovered this year. I urge you to not apply that towards free full day K. There are other uses for that money, such as returning the money to the towns in the form of eliminating a vastly substantial amount of the debt that's been incurred by the leach field at the high school, which is about $300,000. I'm not going to speak for the other towns, but I will speak for Bolton. Bolton was in tough financial straits last year. It's going to be as bad or worse this year. We need every dollar we can get in relief, and to be able to eliminate debt, I think, is a very positive thing. I think it sends a message to the towns, and I think it is a responsible thing to do. This is non-recurring money. Apply it towards the debt in your own lives. If you had the opportunity, if you came into one-time amount of money and you were able to eliminate a substantial amount of debt in your own finances, I think you would, and I encourage you to do that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We can hear from 3 more citizens who want to make comments. Anyone else? Okay. Okay.
So I'm here to speak, can you hear me, on behalf of the Nashoba Parents Demanding Action. There are 590 of us at this point. We want to thank you for the work that you've done and continue to do in the throes of a really hard situation. Our goal is still to understand how the abuse of a student by a teacher was reported to our administration in June, but despite state-mandated reporter and Title IX laws, no action was taken until that same party went directly to the police 3 months later. We are grateful to you for listening to your constituents last week by voting to engage an independent law firm to conduct the investigation. We also sincerely appreciate the school committee's discussion and the ensuing civil dialogue from our community on the topic of putting superintendent on paid administrative leave while the investigation is underway. It has pushed us to dive deeper to answer the question why we think this is so important. So here is our answer. In our research, we have discovered numerous examples of school systems that have found themselves in similar peril. Phillips Exeter, Lincoln Sudbury, Concord High School, and reports from many students in high schools around the country. While the circumstances of each of these situations vary, in every case, an incident of abuse was reported, then ignored, or in the best case, horribly mismanaged by administration. Tragically, NRHS is finding itself face-to-face with an all-too common problem. Clearly, the system currently in place has failed. Superintendent Clenchy is directly responsible for the employment of all school district personnel Seen in this light, putting her on leave during the investigation has nothing to do with presumed innocence or guilt. We would like nothing better, just like you, than an investigation that finds no further wrongdoing. Rather, it's driven by a laser focus on our kids and a commitment to a process whereby the facts can come to light without the boss being present. A boss who, if compromised in any way, would have a vested interest in actively minimizing her exposure, and if not, would be proven so by the process itself, and along with it, freed from any misconceptions that could cloud her tenure moving forward. To us, being rightly warned by the tragic example of Phillips Exeter and so many others, it's a simple matter of weighing the potential cost of not finding and fixing what's broken against any other cost. In the meantime, we have absolute confidence that our assistant superintendent is fully equipped to keep things running. Like each of you, we believe in Nashoba Regional School District. This is not our best moment, but paraphrasing Steve O'Riordan, a parent from Stow at last week's meeting, we are confident that when all the dust settles and the press fades away, which I think it already is, our district will not be defined by this incident. Surely, however, we will be defined by how we respond to it. We ask once again for your leadership in this matter, fueled by an unwavering commitment to
Your
our
time is
kids
up.
and an unflinching
finish.
determination to do what's right for them at all costs. And we ask you to vote on it today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other citizens' comments? Yes.
Hi, my name is Grace
You
Accardo.
address the chair, please.
I'm sorry.
Oh, public comments are addressed through the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Grace Accardo, and I'm from Bolton. Thank you for the opportunity to speak
Yeah.
to you today.
Can we? No, it's. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about the child abuse case. I recently reviewed all of the court documents. They describe an adult soliciting an inappropriate sexual relationship with a child. This is tragically so very common in our society. Let that sink in. Child abuse is common. It happens in every corner of the world every single day. If you are not a mental health professional or don't personally know a child abuse survivor, you may not be aware of the power dynamic that takes place when an adult violates safe boundaries. Children, including teenagers, simply do not have the developmental maturity to discern that what is happening is abuse, nor do they have the power to stop it. Predators know this. They groom their victims and build trust, and when that line is crossed, the child is defenseless. They can't escape without a responsible adult to put a stop to the abuse. How many times has abuse been ignored, dismissed, allowed, and then repeated? Countless children have suffered needlessly because a predator was enabled to continue seeking victims and continue abusing. I'd like to bring your attention to one statement I read in the court document. It was easy to miss, but I think it was the most profound statement in the document. In the victim's interview with police, he described how interactions with the teacher evolved and became sexual. He then stated that he realized what he was doing was wrong. Children take responsibility for abuse. They believe it is somehow their choice, their fault. They feel shame because they believe they did something wrong. This boy believes he did something wrong. The weight of that shame causes damage that he will likely spend most of his life recovering from. Where the shame belongs is on adults who saw something and didn't report it. The shame is on adults who heard something and didn't report it. Every single adult in this community, parents, teachers, administrators, school committee, this is now on us. We have the obligation to do the right thing, to advocate for children, to step up and make this right. We truly have no greater responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other public comments? Oh, okay. Do you want to come up?
Hi, my name is Carly Henderson, and I live in Bolton. Last week, I spoke to this committee about the current student climate of Nashoba and what needs to be done to fix it. Today I'm here to talk about why it's important that Superintendent Clenchy is placed on administrative leave for the duration of the investigation. This action isn't condemning anyone as guilty. However, it is making sure that nothing can get in the way of the investigation. Currently, there is a lot of discussion on when this teacher was reported and to whom. We should all be ready to do whatever needs to be done to find justice for all the kids who are allegedly, willingly left around someone who is abusing their power as a teacher. I also wonder how faculty members of the school feel that they are now associated with a school that allegedly doesn't care about its students, as well as other teachers who have to balance being a parent of the school district as well as a professional working in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's our time for public comments. At this time, it's updates from the chair. Our next meeting is December 4th, and we have a legal issues for school committee workshop, and that's going to start at 4:30. If it's not there already, Brooke, I would like the school calendar placed on the December 4th agenda. And at that time, I know that it would be good if Anne Marie could talk to the school committee about the process and the committee and how they go about making their decisions. And also, we had said we were going to evaluate the change in the professional development days. So it would be good to hear how that is going to happen. And then also, school committee members have an opportunity to ask your own questions, and if you have suggestions or anything about the committee, it's a good time to ask Anne Marie, or if you have ideas, to share them at that time. We will be having a presentation about special education. Joan DeAngelis will be making that, and we'll determine when we look at the planning calendar tonight. But you will have homework for that presentation. So the presentation will give an overview of the special education population and programs, and we'll focus on some specific programs. But what I asked Joan to put together for us is a resource binder, and inside there is a table of contents. Now, we're not going to go through these documents during the presentation, but it will be, I think folks will find it informative. You can see what's in there. There's a description of the different programs, the DESC's IEP process guide, and then there is an eligibility, an initial and reevaluation determination sheet or flow chart. And then you can see what an IEP looks like, and then there is the Parents' Notice of Procedural Safeguards, also known as the Parents' Rights brochure. So you'll have some time to look through this. If you have questions about anything when Joan presents, please have them ready, because I want her to focus on telling us about the different programs in our populations. But this will give folks a good overview. And I want to thank Joan and her staff for pulling this together for us. We really appreciate it. So, Ivy, do you have stuff for us?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So I'm Ibby. I'm a senior from Lancaster. And this week, or more likely the month, because I haven't been here in a while, at Luther Burbank, their musical is starting up in a few weeks. They're performing Seussical the Musical Junior, which is really cute. It's one of my favorites. The school hosted their 4th annual Sam Pollock Memorial 5K Run and Walk on Saturday, November 16th. Half of the proceeds raised are given to the school as a scholarship to graduating seniors. And Luther Burbank is also continuing their Positive Sign Thursday, and they're adding music as well. So those are just some of the kids. Every Thursday they make positive signs, and they're greeted in the morning with those. At the elementary school in Lancaster, they had math night on the 19th, in the cafeteria. So students came to participate with their families. They played a lot of different games, and each child took home a folder filled with different math games to play at home too. The PTO sponsored an enrichment program, the Sky Dome Planetarium event, for students grade 1 through 6. Students were taken on a 45-minute tour of the solar system inside an inflatable planetarium. And there's a video there if you ever want to watch that as well. In Bolton, so here there is a family dinner tomorrow night in the cafeteria at 5 p.m. And recently the 7th graders just returned from their trip to Sargent Center, also known as Nature's Classroom. In Stow, they hosted Sam Drazen, who's an adult with Treacher Collins syndrome, which many of the kids know from reading the book or seeing the movie Wonder. He walked around with the kids, told them lessons of kindness and empathy, and he was also shared on morning announcements. Stow also recognized World Diabetes Day by all wearing blue, and they're putting together Thanksgiving meal donations in conjunction with the Warm Hearts of Stow organization. They also have a coding club and book club that are running again as after-school opportunities for students. At the high school, the Tri-M Music Honor Society just held its annual coffee house at Emma's Cafe. They raised more than $800 for the Give a Note Foundation, so different students performed. They sang, played instruments, and there were even some poets that shared slam poems or just like a chapter from a book they were writing. The fall play also just concluded, which was A Midsummer Night's Dream. It was beautifully organized and performed. Upcoming on November 22nd, students will attend an assembly of Navigating the Cyber World during the school day. The nurses have coordinated with the Massachusetts Partnerships for Youth program. And DECA will sponsor Team Trivia Night to raise money for former Nashoba teacher Kevin Lacoste this Thursday, November 21st at 7 o'clock at the high school in the cafeteria. You can register a team of up to 6 people, and it's $10 at the door. I believe that is all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Ibby? Thank you. It's so nice to hear a comprehensive view of what's going on in the district, and you do such a nice job. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Ibby. At this time, I'd like to ask Kevin Freitag to join us at the table. Kevin Freitag is one of our attorneys from Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane. Thank you, Kevin. Let's see, Superintendent's report. Oh, sure.
So Dr. Maguire and I will trade off here. He's going to start just to do a bit of a broad overview on Challenge Day and where we started last year and where we're at this year, and then I will jump in with regards to negotiations and budget.
Thank you. So those of you might ask, what is Challenge Day? Challenge Day was started at the high school in the past. This year, we're going to offer it to the entire sophomore class this year, creating a world where everyone feels safe, loved, and celebrated. What is Challenge Day? It's more than just an anti-bullying workshop. It really is a breakthrough experience that can shift the school culture in just one day. This case, we're going to have 3 days, December 2nd, the 4th, and the 5th. All sophomores will participate in the program, as well as faculty, and as well as myself. I was invited yesterday by the students in the high school to participate, and I'm looking forward to that. So imagining enemies finding common ground, creating peace, friends healing past hurts and making amends, students and adults coming together to create safer schools and inspiring each other to be the change. This certainly is a program that we're pushing for at the high school and to grow at the high school. It was very, very well received in the past, and we wanted to certainly grow it this year in terms of bringing our community together. So that will take place the first week in December.
On our agenda here, the negotiation request. This is normally received in the month of November or December of the year that the school committee begins to start negotiations with our unions. We always start with our Unit A first, followed by our Unit C, because Unit C very often, in a lot of ways, will mimic what happens with our Unit A. We have received that formal request, so later on in our agenda here, you'll note that we're going to have to pull together a negotiating team. And we'll probably start the process, I would hope, in early January in terms of starting meetings with them. The month of December, we generally start to get together and decide, what our priorities are, the direction that we'd like to take this. So just a bit of a heads up that we have received the formal request. The next item there is just with regards to budget. That's ongoing, as everybody knows, and we touch base on pretty much every meeting on where we're at with it. Our business office right now is finishing up putting the final touches on the first draft. Now, we all know that first draft is never where we land. We always know it's too much money, that we could never possibly afford it. However, you'll recall that a couple of years ago, the school committee had asked that we bring everything forward and then start to chip away at. So that is a practice that we have taken, and that's how we're producing it again this year as well. I did meet with our town managers, our town administrators the other day. We have a strong flavor of where they'd like us to see us land, so we know that going into this. So probably, we'll aim towards those types of numbers in about the late January or early February time period. And I'll have Dr. Maguire just finish up with the presentation last night.
And just one more thing on the Challenge Day piece. If you recall, Jody Specht, our Director of Guidance, came to speak about Challenge Day a few meetings ago, and she showed a video from last year. So any questions regarding Challenge Day can certainly be aimed towards Jody Specht at the high school guidance office. And then finally, we just wanted to, as I noted last week, we did have a community workshop that took place last night. The Massachusetts Partnership for Youth offered the first of several presentations for students in our communities last night in the high school auditorium. Their presentation addressed and reviewed the challenges and dangerous situations that can arise through the use of the internet, social media, smartphones with children and adults. Parents and students were made aware of the popular applications, social media sites, and programs used by youth online. Corey Mashburn, who will then be coming again on Friday, will offering 4 separate sessions, one for each grade level, will explain and will engage with the issues and possible consequences of cyberbullying, sexting, and revealing information to strangers online. A discussion and question and answer period are provided to allow for audience engagement as well as discussion. And as I mentioned, 4 more presentations will take place this Friday.
And I just want to give a shout out to all the parents that did attend. Like we said, we had 26 parents out last night, and the feedback that we got was that it was just an outstanding presentation. Very, very informative. I know one individual, I think, stayed until around 8 o'clock or 8:30. Shout out to Lisa Gulbicki, who stepped up to the plate as she always does, our nurse leader. Lisa, we want to thank you so much for your efforts to coordinate all of this, including the Friday's event, the upcoming Friday's event. So thank you so much for that. And that's it for us tonight.
Madam Chairman, quickly, just a quick question to the Superintendent regarding item number 3, where you said that you've done preliminary discussions with our local town administrators and they've shared their perspectives. Just, is there anything unique or extraordinary that they've shared with you?
No, actually not. I think one of the strengths, of course, of being in the district for a couple of years and having worked with them for, every month we meet, at least once a month, sometimes more frequently. There's a sense of honesty that sits at that table now when we sit down and we just talk this stuff through. And so that was one of the topics. We each bring our separate topics to the table, and budget's always one of them at this time period. There was nothing exceptional or extraordinary that was brought up. It was just, these are the types of numbers that we're hoping you can come in around. And we have taken that approach every year that I've been here. So that doesn't mean that that's the number that drives us, but we're very sensitive about where we try to get to so that it's palpable for our, and something that our communities can accept, so that we don't take numbers that we know will never pass. So I think it's just about building that relationship and continuing on with it.
Other questions? Leah.
So, is this thing on? So I think that you guys have a couple of really challenging meetings with high school students in the next couple of days, Challenge Day and the cyber workshop. So I imagine that, and you may have some brave students who actually broach the subject of what the high school is dealing with right now. So are you especially Challenge Day, because it can unearth things that you don't even see coming. Hudson does it. It's a phenomenal success. The kids really feel connected after that when it's done right. And so I just am hoping and assuming that you have things in place to manage any kind of extraordinary response.
I think that we're very well prepared for that. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a really good point. And I think that sometimes if you have not had that experience of what it's really like to be in that room when that happens, it's hard to imagine. No, our counselors are at the ready. They're well prepared for that particular day. I did take it in parts of it last year. It's very emotional, and it's just an incredible life experience. It really is. But you're absolutely right. It does unearth some things that you aren't expecting. So you're absolutely right. We know that we need to be prepared. The Friday, I think, is a little bit different. I'm not expecting quite as much of that kind of thing on Friday because it's more factual based and a presentation structured and that kind of thing. So I'm not expecting quite as much potential for that kind of occurrence on Friday as we would for Challenge Day.
I would just quickly follow up, and maybe we're going to address this at a later point, but at what point, or will there be a point at which the high school kids move into a conversation about recent events where we, open up some sort of a discussion around safety and the culture of the building?
Well, I think you'll start to see more of that come through. And again, I see Lisa shaking her head yes, because we are in discussions with a number of different agencies to bring additional resources in. And I think that we feel strongly right now that needs to be outside agencies that come in so that there's kind of a clear pathway for that rather than anybody else that might be otherwise linked to the building. We're looking at bringing in a number of different things. And as they come available, we'll, of course, be putting them out on our website. We'll be letting people know, just like we did on yesterday, actually, at 2 o'clock or 2:30. We sent, an email blast out just reminding everybody about last night. So we'll make sure that the information is out there and available.
So, new business, fall sports update. Is that Tanya Rich? Tanya, you want to join us? I did it. You got one of these. She's at the ready. Okay. Thank you, Tanya.
That's okay, thanks. So Tanya and I had spoken earlier, and she had approached the idea of that maybe when she came to do her fall update, she could also talk to us about our unified sports update. And she sent us the link that's on our website right now with the unified sports, which I thought was just incredible. So we have got it teed up here. It's queued up so that we can put it out there. So would you like us to do it first before you speak, or would you like to speak to it first and then we show it? We'll watch it first. Okay. So Mike, can you put it on for us, please? Thanks. I told Sydney that we were going to put this up here tonight.
Unified track makes me feel special because some people see me and they're like, oh, I don't feel like he's so fast.
When I try unified sports, I actually managed to make friends, and that relates one point to me than regular track.
Unified sports makes everybody able to better their best. Welcome to Inclusion Weekly, a show about how schools and students are working with Special Olympics to push for equal rights and opportunities for students with intellectual disabilities. Today, we're looking at the important role of unified sports.
Unified sports. 'Cause 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 'c
Thank you, Mike. Tanya, special thank you to you for all the work that you do with all of this. And I told Sydney the other day when I was in the office with her how proud I am of her efforts. And I remember last year I received a letter actually from another AD who said how impressed they were with her because she was out representing Nashoba. And they sent me the letter to say what an incredible representative she is. And tonight, you just, how can you not feel so much pride in your heart? So special thanks to you, Tanya. So I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks. So our unified sports program, we started our unified track team 7 years ago, and it started small, 15, 20 kids. And now over the last 7 years, it has grown each year. Now we've got over 50 kids on our track team every spring. And since we added track, we've now offered bowling. We do unified bowling in the fall. We've done a cooking and crafts club in the winter. And just this past fall, we started our unified basketball team, which has been an amazing experience. You can see the improvement in our team every day. I was actually lucky enough to staff it yesterday at practice, so I had fun playing with the kids and seeing basketball practice. The team's currently 4-0. We had 2 home games, which the gym was packed. It was great to see staff members, our kids there cheering everybody on. And then Thursday, tomorrow, we're heading off to the MIA Special Olympics Jamboree at Algonquin, where we're playing 2 different games. There's opening ceremonies, big jamboree. And also special tomorrow is Lieutenant Menard's son, Josh, plays for the Worcester Tech team, and they're in our jamboree tomorrow. And our unified PE class, along with our basketball players, made cards for Josh, and we're going to present their basketball team. Josh will not be there tomorrow because he's not back in school, but we're going to present their team with cards. And also we have a family that has a scholarship that we're going to be offering $1,000 to Josh and his family as well. So we'll be doing that special presentation at the Jamboree tomorrow afternoon, which I'm really looking forward to. So like I said, right now our unified sports are growing. I think it's a great thing for our school. Sydney is my right-hand girl, and she keeps pushing us to add more, and she's still one of the Massachusetts representatives for Special Olympics, so she's actually at the Bruins tonight, hanging out with the Bruins, she told me. She had to miss practice, but things are going very well with unified sports. And as for fall, so we're just finishing up fall season. It started out a little challenging with Triple E this year, so I feel like I scheduled about 3 times. Everything, we had to move all of our night games to afternoon games and move buses and officials and everything. But we made it through, and I think we had a very successful fall. Our cross-country teams did very well in the league championship. Nashoba had 4 girls placed in the top 10, and our boys team won the league championship. The boys team went on and placed 5th in the Central Mass District meet. And we had 2 sophomores, Freddie Collins and Elaine Oberles, who both raced in the state meet and placed in the top 60 in the state, which was very impressive. Our volleyball team continued to do great this year. They finished their season at 14-7. They won the league title, and they qualified for the postseason and hosted a home game. The golf team had a record of 11-5 with big wins over Algonquin and Shrewsbury to end their season. The team won the Midwatch B League Championship. And we had 1 student, Max Quinn, one of our seniors. He placed in the top 10 at the Central Mass District Championship and qualified and played in the state championship as well. Our boys soccer team had their best season since 2013 as they continue to improve each year, and they missed playoffs by just 1 point this year. But the team won the league sportsmanship award, which I was very proud about. The girls soccer team did very well again. They won the league title and lost a heartbreaker in double overtime against Westboro in the playoffs. Our football team is currently 6-4. They qualified for playoffs, and they will play Clinton on Thanksgiving to finish the season. Our field hockey team just finished their season last week, and they had another amazing year with an overall record of 20-2. The team won the league title, the Central Mass Division I title for the 2nd year in a row, and unfortunately, they lost a heartbreaker as well, 2-1 in double overtime to Longmeadow in the state semifinals last week. Also last week, we had 6 student athletes sign their national letters of intent so they can continue their academic and athletic careers at Division I colleges. And this is the most Division I athletes we've signed at one time. To name them, so we have Reed Parson, who's attending UMass Lowell to play baseball. Abby McNulty will be playing soccer at Boston University. Jillian Fay will be playing field hockey at UNH. Kaylee McMahon will be going to Stanford University to play field hockey. Erica Spallone will be attending Merrimack College for field hockey. And Mason Jones will be pole vaulting at Bryant University. And that was the first early signing day of the year. We also have other kids that will be signing throughout the year at Division II and, coming into Division III schools as well. One thing I just wanted to mention about middle school cross country is our Hale girls team won the Division II state championship 2 weeks ago, which was a huge accomplishment. We have our Athletic Hall of Fame this weekend, where we'll be inducting 5 student athletes, 2 coaches, and 3 teams on Sunday this weekend. And other than that, I'm gearing up. Winter sports start on December 2nd, so we're jumping right into the next season.
Any questions for Tanya? Tanya, I don't know how you do it. You have so much energy and positivity, and I know you love it, and it makes such a difference for the kids. And just thank you so much for your leadership in this regard, but for what you bring to your job for the students and for the school community district-wide. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Yep. Okay, I'd like to invite Martina up. We're going to talk about MCAS, and just to tee this up a little bit, I have asked Martina and Todd. You were sent a huge packet of all the MCAS scores from the grades for math and ELA, and then science for 5 and 8, and then the 10th grade stuff. And every year we have sort of, regaled in how well we do. And we still continue to do well. But that's not where our challenge is. And I think that what I would like us to focus on and to hear from Todd and Martina is the students for whom there needs to be more development and growth. And again, the teachers are to be commended for how well our students do academically, as evidenced in the MCAS, and you'll see some of that tonight. But I also want to know what we're doing to address the students with high needs. So, Todd.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm just going to acknowledge it's never easy to follow Tanya Rich, so we're excited to present to you the MCAS overview on the results tonight. And as Chairwoman Codianne mentioned, tonight's presentation, we really want to focus on how we really are meeting the needs of our subgroups, and how, one of our biggest goals really is to close the gap between our high needs and our non-high needs students, and that's what tonight's presentation is going to highlight for you. We'll do some brief overviews of overall data, but tonight we really want to focus on and show you what we're doing to close that gap between those groups of students. I also sent for you in packet school committee disaggregated data, as Kathy mentioned, by grade level. That's not in the slides tonight because that would be about 90 slides. But by grade level, we've mapped it out, and you can now see also cohorts of students because they've been taking this test now for several years, so you can see the comparison over in the growth over the several years. So in the packet that I did forward to you. So in terms of tonight's presentation, so I'm just going to tee this up before I'm joined by Martina, who is fantastic with this data as our K-12 curriculum director. But I want to talk a little bit about accountability data first, and I highlighted a lot of this last year as the accountability system for school districts changed tremendously in the last year, and it is still very, very new. We continue to attend a lot of sessions, a lot of workshops on this, and they continue, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education continues to tweak and get some feedback on the things that they are tying into our accountability rating. So the news is really good in terms of our accountability, and our district classification, as well as all of our school classifications, are not requiring any assistance or intervention whatsoever, and that is really, really great news. So that is across every school as well as across the district. That accountability determination is really based on achievement, growth, high school completion, which is the high school only, English language proficiency in grades 3 through 8. And then there are some additional indicators which go into our accountability rating that ties into additional coursework that we often offer at the high school level, such as advanced placement courses, Project Lead the Way courses, as well as chronic absenteeism and attendance. Last year, our high school in one particular area was in needing assistance as it related to attendance and participation for our subgroups on our assessments. And because of the work we did around attendance and the work that we continue to do in the district, that was remedied this year. So that was really good news that there was no intervention or assistance needed for any of our schools. So that was the great news. Also, this is broken down by school. On the next slide, on the school classifications, you'll see that all of our schools are well within meeting targets and not requiring assistance or any intervention from the state whatsoever, and that's fantastic. I did kind of spill the beans at an earlier meeting about Luther Burbank Middle School, but Luther Burbank Middle School this year was designated as a school of recognition for 2018 and 2019, and that was based on high achievement, high growth, and meeting and exceeding all targets. Very few schools in the Commonwealth receive this level of recognition. So kudos and congrats to the Luther Burbank Middle School and their leadership. I know Principal Friend and Assistant Principal Steve Grant are here tonight with us. So thank you for that and well done. I know that they'll probably be honored at the State House later this year. So we're now going to get into the achievement overall from the district, and I'm going to turn it over to Martina to talk a little bit about our growth versus achievement, and then get into our subgroup data and what we're doing to really close that gap between our high needs and our non-high needs students. So take it away, Martina. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to present to you this evening. During this part of the presentation, I plan to describe the district-level MCAS data and share some of the district actions that teachers and administrators have taken to support these outcomes, as well as our next steps. I want to acknowledge that there are many who contribute to the progress of our students, and we're grateful to the entire Nashoba staff and our community for their contribution to our students' ongoing progress. So in this first slide, you see it's the first of 4 where we're representing growth versus achievement data for ELA, and you'll see math as well. This graph is representing grades 3 through 8. In the vertical axis are the percent of students meeting or exceeding expectations, and that's comparing to the mean student growth percentile. And you can see that our data is broken down by grade level there and is all congregated toward the upper right-hand corner, and that's where we aim to be and continue to aim to grow higher. Being in the upper right-hand corner means that we're both scoring very well on the assessment overall, and that students are making significant progress in comparison to how they themselves did the previous year. So we're always striving to be as far as possible up there. As I said, I'm also going to highlight what we have done recently that supports this, and also our planned next steps. Our recent work throughout the district on the K-5 initiative around reading and writing workshop has really strongly supported these results. And this year we've taken a next step to incorporate the middle school into professional development, both in terms of skills-based planning and also integrating the literacy workshop model. And so we're really excited to tie together that work. Next slide, please. So this is very similar looking slide for the math achievement versus growth data. One example that supports the ongoing growth and achievement in this graph is the curriculum mapping effort that was taken on by grades 6 through 8 math and special educators last year. During this time, the team worked together to really lay out across the district the shared expectations within the 3 math courses, as well as prioritizing standards that could then become the focus within the courses, and also with the additional support provided by people like special educators and math specialists to those to students taking those courses. This year, as a next step, the math teachers and special educators have adopted a new curriculum resource that is more closely aligned to the Massachusetts state standards, and we see that as another opportunity to further our progress for our students and with our students. Next slide, please. So this third of 4 slides shows the ELA achievement versus growth data. Again, you can see that we're aiming towards the top right corner. Some work has been done in the last year with the author Kate Roberts, the author of A Novel Approach, again focused on choice-based reading and integrating the workshop model. This year that work continues, and we have the addition of a humanities lead teacher who's providing coaching support to our 6th through 12 ELA teachers, so we're really excited about that too. For both ELA and math, I wanted to mention that last year was the first year in 10th grade that the teachers and students took the computer-based MCAS. So we're also going to continue to support their preparation this year for the second year of that assessment, that form of the assessment. This is the last of these slides. It's math achievement versus growth in grade 10. Again, you see a similar high % of students meeting and exceeding expectations, and we see the point for Nashoba shift slightly to the left. We see this as potential for our students in terms of our opportunity to further push their growth. This year, the math team at the high school is working with the Teachers 21 consultant to further develop their strategies for supporting and engaging struggling students particularly to persist in solving more complicated open problems, again, to try to support that group of students. Next slide, please. So now we're jumping into the subgroup achievement data that Dr. Maguire mentioned. So we'll see several slides that kind of look similar. They break down the subgroup data, comparing district achievement data versus the state for our high needs, our non-high needs students, and then comparing that to the 3 major subgroups that we have in our district. So here you see ELA data for grades 3 through 8. We see in the top left our non-high needs students, top right economically disadvantaged, bottom left students with disabilities, and bottom right English learners. We continue to monitor the progress of our subgroups particularly, which include the 3 that I just mentioned, and I'm pleased to share that the students in this subgroup continue to demonstrate strong performance relative to the state. We also noticed that there appears to be a positive shift in the number of students in our subgroups who met or exceeded expectations over the past few years. Some work that we've done recently to support the closing of the achievement gap that Dr. Maguire mentioned are increasing the EL teacher staffing to support students both within their general education classrooms and also providing additional small group instruction. We've also begun utilizing one-to-one assessment tools in K-8 ELA in order to give us more informative data for at-risk students to inform our small group instruction and also our Tier 1 classroom-based instruction. Next slide, please. Okay. As you can see, although students are doing very well in comparison to the state, we do continue to look for opportunities to reduce the achievement gap. We also know that a number of students whose data is represented here actually fall into more than one subgroup. This indicates the need to continue working toward integrative and cohesive support for students. Examples of the next steps we see for providing integrated support for students include professional development that is shared among groups, including special educators, literacy specialists, and English language teachers, English learner teachers, excuse me, on using assessment data to plan groups and instruction. This year we'll also be supporting a team chair and EL teacher group to do professional development around supporting English learners with disabilities. Again, attempting to integrate the supports that we can provide to students who have multiple forms of need. Next graph, please. Okay. Our work to provide integrated support for students in the area of math include the continuation of the co-teaching model, which I've been here to present a number of times, both in the middle school and at the high school level. We also have begun using one-to-one assessment tools in math to give us more information on data at-risk students in K-5. Next slide, please. This is the subgroup achievement data for grade 10. You can see that it looks very similar to the other groups. And this, in this graph, I wanted to highlight next step for this year with the math department at the high school. There's been work done to develop what they're calling a department model for special educators, where a special educator is actually joining the core content departments. And it's really great that there's a single special educator who kind of is actually part of those departments and also co-teaches at least one class within the departments. Again, another effort to try to integrate the supports so that we're not in silos. Next graph, please. So this is the science subgroup achievement data. It looks very similar. Overall, we're doing well compared to the state, and we still want to continue to push the closing of that achievement gap. Work to support the science achievement of all students in grades 3 to 8 include continuing to refine our shared science, technology, and engineering curriculum maps for grades 6 through 8, and continuing to support the STEM Scopes resource for grades 1 through 8. This resource supports active and project-based learning experiences for all students. This year, as a next step, we're also providing professional development for science teachers at the middle school level in supporting students with language-based learning disabilities. And the last of these graphs, this is the grade 10 STE, Science, Technology, Engineering data. One change that was made last year that will support, we think, all students to further their science education at the high school is that all students began taking freshman physics. There was a lot of planning done to ensure that some of the foundational skills that students need to really push themselves to a high level of science at the high school were integrated initially in the freshman physics class. This year, again, just like for math, the science department also has a co-taught physics course and a department model where they have a special educator within the department as well. Next. Great. So these just are highlighting the MCAS dates for 2020. The notable part of this is that all assessments this year will be computer-based. So this is the first year where everything is computer-based and there's no longer paper-based, with some small exceptions for specific students. Next slide. The next two slides really just highlight what I've already kind of given you in the context of the other slides in terms of district actions that we've taken to support the growth and achievement for our students. So we can move ahead 2 slides, if that's okay, to the one that says next steps, the next one after this. Thank you. So in addition to the next steps I described earlier in the presentation, and some are listed there, we will also be broadening our focus on social emotional learning, again, in an effort to further integrate our approach to student support. We're working toward our district improvement goal of embedding the learning and practice of SEL skills into academic areas in order to give students many opportunities to learn and develop these critical skills. In addition, we're beginning to look at data across different domains through the use of data visualization tools that will eventually allow us to look at a variety of student data together in order to determine what comprehensive set of student supports can be provided for our students. Overall, we continue to be very proud of the work that our students and educators do, and we look forward to supporting a culture of continual growth across the district. We believe that the greatest form of support for all of our students come when we all work together. Thank you.
I know I saw a lot of these last year, these kinds of graphs. Would it be possible to make a year-to-year comparison, and rather than using graphs where the numbers are kind of mushy, that we could actually see some comparison numbers from year to year in these categories?
Sure. I actually have some for this year as well. Let me see if I brought them. So you're talking about like kind of a chart that shows year to year what the progress that the students
Right, but a chart that is more closely allied to the numbers rather than showing 60, 70, 80% and having a line drawn somewhere in between.
Sure. Well, I'll provide you this and then we can talk about the next needs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Leah?
Hi, Martina.
Hi.
So could we possibly go back to the, say, grade 10 math or grade 10 ELA scores? Thank you so much. So I know that the categories for achievement have just changed with the new MCAS. So it seems to me that even in the non-high needs students, there are still 10% that are partially meeting expectations. And so what does that mean for those students? Does that mean they still have a passing score and that they don't need to retake?
Right. Yep. So the graduation requirement is partially meeting and above. So students in the category of partially meeting still meet the competency determination.
Okay. Okay. And then just really quickly, do you happen to know off the top of your head what the percentage of the total population, this is kind of to Steve's question, what's the total population of students with disabilities?
I do not know that number off the top of my head. We could get that though.
Because it's relatively, I mean, maybe you could say it across the entire district because it tracks, right?
It's, pardon me? 18.5, I was going to say, I think it's just under 20%, right?
And do you find that, I don't know if you guys can tell me this, but do you find that there's crossover between the subgroups?
Absolutely, more than 50%.
More than 50%.
I just looked at it this morning, yep.
Okay, so some of these charts are sharing data for the same children.
They are, exactly right.
Okay.
Again, just showing how critical integrated support is in terms of knowing all the needs of a particular student.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Other questions? Mike?
Hi, Martina.
Hi.
I hope I'm not asking you to be redundant in any way, and if I am, of course, just tell me. But I wonder if you can provide the school committee with any specific ways in which the results of these sort of annual updates of our performances drive on a year-to-year basis our curriculum or our content, how we deliver it. For example, our kids performed in this way, XYZ, for science, technology, and engineering, grade 10. It seems like there is I'm not saying specifically to this, but hypothetically, it seems like there's a deficiency, so here's what we're going to do with that data to sort of modify our approach. Can you share with us any modifications that kind of result from that?
I can share the process, and I think the modifications often happen at the school level. So within each of our schools, the teachers do sit down and kind of dig into the data on a curriculum and an item-by-item level. When possible and where the data exists, they compare that to other data because this is really just one data point. And then where they see overlap, they do make modifications. Examples of that are I think it was last year, it could have been the year before, a particular teacher in one of our middle schools looked at her geometry data and felt that it wasn't very strong, so she tried the following year teaching geometry closer to the MCAS and sort of sprinkling it in throughout the year in order to see whether that helped students kind of retain and make better connections. And that did change the following year. So as part of our process, the teachers make a plan, and where there appears to be a district trend, I'm even more involved in helping to make that plan, but often it's school by school, and they're kind of tweaking what they're doing on a day-by-day basis to try to address that.
So even a district plan happens on a year-to-year basis, or is it a 3-year goal to achieve this this number, this value, and then it gets revisited every 3 years, or is it every year we look at it, we address it, and we tweak?
We look at it every year. We look at it every year, and like I said, we look in different ways. One, for a district-wide trend, that would imply there's something big about the curriculum that we need to adjust. More often in our district, we're seeing smaller trends or school-by-school trends, where there's something either about the order, the amount of time that was spent, just something smaller that may or may not be able to be addressed, but the teams always make a plan. Thanks.
Leah.
I'm noticing in the science grade 10 data, it looks like the old format.
Yes.
And so...
Great question. Great noticing.
Is this coming year going to be the first time that the science students And is it also the first year that our kids will take the physics test in 9th grade?
So I'm actually not sure whether they're going to take the physics test in 9th grade. I know that is something being explored for the co-taught physics class particularly. However, all students in grade 10 will take the bio MCAS, and that this will be the first year where it's reported out with the new performance levels. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment to Mr. Horesh's question too. Martina also at the beginning of the year meets with all of the principals as well. So I mean, she's alluded to the fact that there's individual teacher meetings, but there are also principal meetings as well. And the principals, when they first get the data, start to analyze it, and then they analyze it, then they get together and they jointly analyze it together. So there's a lot of tweaking and reorganizing of material and instruction right at the beginning of the year before the year even almost starts. So it's done very extensively every year.
I want to preface this by saying that, is this working? Personally, I think there's too many state-mandated standardized tests, but I realize your hands are tied. You have nothing to do with that. So if we're going to make the students take the test, we might as well should learn from the information that we receive. Mm-hmm. I want to go back to the very beginning of this idea of not requiring assistance or intervention, and what would, I don't need to hear every metric, but what is something that would kind of drop us down to that next level? Like, what is that next level? And what does that really mean? Is it action plans and more reporting? Do we lose financial assistance? Like, what is the consequence of kind of if things were to drop?
Mm-hmm. Can we go back to that slide? And Dr. Maguire, you may need to add to this. There. So what happens is that within the categories that are listed there, a set of points is applied depending on how close the district and or the school came to meeting the target. Typically, for each category, it's 0 out of 4 points. They look at the students overall and the lowest performing students within the school. And what happens is that all those points are kind of aggregated, and between the lowest performing students and all students, the point values are averaged, such that the points for lowest performing students weigh equally to the points for all students. So what could drive a district down is if any one of those categories, they most likely declined in meeting targets, or if in more than one of the categories they declined. I don't know the name of the next level. Do you? Requiring assistance? Correct. Okay.
They've made it very basic to go with those two categories when it's district-wide.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not speaking with direct knowledge of what actually happens, but I know there's a lot of planning. Depending on how much assistance is required, the state will have some form of involvement there in the form of the various networks that DESE has to support districts in those categories.
And I just want to add to that too, in terms of in the past where there oftentimes we would be comparing ourselves to other districts. This new accountability system has us comparing ourselves to ourselves. So, you can't compare our district to, say, another district that has an ELL population that is above a certain criteria that they get assessed and held accountable for their ELL population. Ours is so small that we are not held accountable for our ELL population. So you cannot compare us to, say, an Acton-Boxborough, which may have that accountability rating. So it's very individualized, and it allows us to compare ourselves against ourselves every year in meeting growth targets that are specifically designed for our district.
So I had a second question planned, but I think you might have just answered it, in that particularly with the subgroup populations, I realize it makes sense to compare our population to the state average, but in a lot of ways I kept thinking those are very different comparisons, and it might make more sense to look at either a model school where the subgroups look exactly like the overall population, which in my opinion I think is what we're all aiming for, or some type of district that has demographic similarities or something like that. But you're saying that Now we're just looking at ourselves versus ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. But right, okay, yeah. That actually makes sense.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. And thanks to the committee for your questions. Good questions. Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is full-day kindergarten. Pat Maroney, would you join us? And I'm going to let Brooke tee this up.
Thank you, and yes, Mike, if you can put this presentation on, and I'm going to just kind of walk you through it again, and more of a review, and I think our intent tonight was to just bring forward an iteration that you might want to think about. I think we need a decision. Are we going to push forward with the full day K for this year or next year? Where does our committee stand in terms of prioritizing this so that we have direction for budget purposes? So one of the iterations I want to present tonight is one that we are putting forward and saying if we wanted to bump up the schedule of when we start this process, we could do it right now in light of the last year and how we ended the last year. This doesn't mean that we're saying this is the only way, but this is a way that we can consider this. And I'm going to go through this just really quickly. Some of these numbers we've had up here before, so they're not brand new to you. The kindergarten enrollment data, this is where we sit with our schools right now for the half day and full day, and what we were, what we were seeing is more of a trend away from the half days and certainly more of a trend towards full days. Full day K, and that's what we were hearing from our parents is could you please take a look at implementing some type of a full day K program. And so we put that out there last year as a priority, and here's where we're sitting again this year. Our numbers are not all that terribly different, but let's go to the next slide. One of the things that we were looking at as we were projecting and trying to project numbers was, is there a large difference between those kids who are coming in from the pre-K program, the K, and then the 1? And so when you take a look at this, and of course if you're at home and you're watching this, what we're really looking at is the numbers from here to here and looking at the differential to see if there might be problems created by that with just the sheer addition of numbers. We thought that that might happen. In fact, it didn't happen. We have some anomalies. We have some years where you might see a 14, but for the most part, it doesn't happen very often. You can see that some years we even lose kids between 1 year and the next. This over here, this is Mary Rowlandson, and it's one of the things that we need to keep in mind, of course, especially when you're looking at probably the next meeting, the meeting thereafter, when you're thinking about school choice and whether that's something you want to open up or not, and keeping in mind the fact that we've got a lot of our growth in some of our communities right now, or large subdivisions that are on the horizon, and then you might start to see numbers like this happen. But for the most part, it didn't scare us off the notion of looking at full day K and knowing that this could be doable for us. So if we take a look at the next slide, one of the things that we had talked about was, our biggest cost in running the school district is always salaries, right? About 80% or a little bit more than 80% of our yearly budget is just salaries. And so that's a key thing for us to look at. So right now for FY20, we based it taking a look at our current year. Our kindergarten teachers basically cost us about $871,000, and instructional assistants about $372,000. So our grand total is about $1.2 million right now. If we can go to the next slide. And then of course we have to say, okay, how do we fund that $1.2 million? So basically we've got the 1.2 there, and from the revolving fund, which is our tuition money that we get from our parents, you can see that we get nowhere near the cost of what it really costs to run a K program. So that differential, in this case about $785,000, is made up through regular appropriation monies that Pat deals with. the key for us is to look at this 459,000, and again with the admission that we don't charge enough for the program for it to be self-sustaining. It just is not a self-sustainable program. And what we found last year was when we contacted the DESE, and if you go to the next slide, we took a look and said, okay, so this 459 is what we're bringing in right now from our community, from our parents, who basically are writing us the checks for their children to be attending this. What we found is that our DES projections of reimbursement was actually more money than we were bringing in with the tuitions. So for us, it made sense to start to look fiscally beyond the philosophical question to say, is this something we should be taking a look at? And we felt it is. And if you take a look at the next slide, Mike, you can see where we get this is taken right off of the DESE website, so you're welcome to go on there and pull it up and you can take a look at where that number comes from. So in short, fiscally, it would make sense that at some point in time we get onto the train of the full day case so that we are getting the money generated back from the state instead of the parents for that about $500,000, $500,000. Over to the next page, Mike. Thank you. We talked last year about the fact that in that first year of implementation, it's a gap year and you don't get any money because you don't charge the tuition because you're actually going to get reimbursed in the next fiscal year by the DESE. So that first year there is no money and you have to figure out where to get that money from because the reimbursement is always 1 year behind. So that 1 year we knew that we had to have at least $500,000 to $600,000 in the bank in order to be able to roll this program out. We also said at the time to our school committee members that that number will change every year, and in fact it will actually increase every year, and you're going to need more money for that gap year, and that's really where we sit right now too. Every year it will always become a little bit more money that's needed. And so we said last year that we knew it was going to be between 500 and 600,000. We had asked you to set aside about 300,000. If you'll recall, we set up a stabilization fund that we got special permission from the DESE on a waiver to set that account up. And so that's in place now. So if we can go to the next slide, Mike, thanks. So really what we're looking at right now are additional need for the if we were to indeed implement this in the new school year with the numbers that we know right now from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we know that we need $619,000 and change for that gap year if we were to implement it into the next fiscal year. And I want to say again, for every year that we wait, that number will increase. But we know right now it's sitting at about $619,000. This is the money that we put aside in the stabilization, and you'll recall those school committee members who were on the school committee last year that you had asked us to set a line aside for $100,000 in the budget, and so we did that. So there's $300,000 right now that we know is already in essence set aside towards the $600,000, in this case $619,000. We would propose the notion of leaving that $100,000 line in play for another year, and so that would be over the course of the next budget year. That $100,000 in the budget that we're creating right now would stay in there. And then what we are proposing is that you pick up, or we pick up the additional needed funds to get to that $619,000 from the surplus that we experienced last year, because we had a wonderful year that'll probably never happen again for health insurance, right? For our insurance lines. That was such a one-off. That's just not a norm to experience the type of year that we did last year. And in fact, if you'll recall, when you saw like other places with their insurance, for example, like Bolton with the municipal side, it was just the opposite to what we experienced last year. So many variables at play, but the bottom line is right now, you could, if you wanted to, implement full day K if you felt it was a priority beginning in the next physical school year, if that was your choice. We're just coming to you now. I mean, it's coming into the month of December. we're working closely with our budget right now. We're going to need direction in the next couple of months of what you want to do so that we can start to orchestrate that. The other thing that I would want to point out, and certainly Don Lowe was correct, I mean, please don't think that we haven't thought about this. We're very conscientious of the cost of the leach field. We're also very conscientious of OPEB. You know, we've been, I think, very diligent in putting money towards OPEB, and so we've got that in our minds as well, which is why when you take a look at this, this is not 100% of the money from the surplus. Whatever you decide, you can make the decision thereafter of what you would like to do with those additional monies. I think it was 360, was it?
360.
Thank you, 360 was the total, yeah. So I just put that out there as an iteration that Pat and I have spoken about. If you wanted to move the full day K implementation up starting in the next physical school year. Open to questions.
Questions for Brooke or Pat? Mary?
There was one slide that showed the cohorts. So what's especially important is to show the number of students who were in kindergarten and then the same cohort, which would be the same students in first grade. And I don't know if I saw, there was one that was very clear because there was one other that showed each town. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So one of the things that I noticed here, the total, and it's a little hard with my contact lenses to see, there, at least in one district, and that district is Lancaster, there are far more students who come to school, the same cohort, so the same group, they come to school in first grade, not necessarily in kindergarten. And in thinking about the fact that of the three towns, Lancaster is the lower wealth community, I'm concerned of an equity issue that financially the burden on families might be even greater in Lancaster. It's great in all three towns. It's very difficult, and I think too about, so that's one issue, the equity issue.
Paying tuition.
Paying
for full day
tuition,
K. Okay.
yes, yeah.
Yep.
Yep, paying tuition, which is difficult for young families in all three towns. It might be a little bit more, and the numbers are supporting that it probably is a little bit more of a financial burden, perhaps in Lancaster. Although we're not going to be discussing the philosophical and the educational reasons for full-day kindergarten, what we know is that we don't want kindergarten to become the new first grade. You think about what's going on in Brookline public schools and how the teachers there, we're talking about that it shouldn't be, kindergarten shouldn't be the new first grade. However, when you have full-day kindergarten, you have enough time to have students be educated in academics, but also in social and emotional learning. You've got the time to do that. Whereas in half-day, there could be a tendency to try to get as many academics in as possible and make kindergarten the new first grade. And I'm not saying that we do that here because I have experience with our kindergartens, and I think our kindergartens, as a former principal of a kindergarten center, kindergarten teachers are extraordinary people who have the challenge of having some students who have had preschool, some students who have not had preschool, some students who are very young and just squeak in, some who are almost 6 years old. And so the diversity of the group that they have is incredible. So my hat always goes off, you know, to kindergarten teachers. And I have to say that I've been a high school principal, an elementary principal, and a kindergarten principal. I learned more when I was a kindergarten principal than at any other time. And I learned from the kindergarten teachers and the kindergarten students. So kindergarten, and so I know we don't want to get into the philosophical, but if we could have the way 95% of districts in Massachusetts do free, full-day kindergarten, we would be doing a tremendous service to our youngest learners. And this may be the very best time fiscally to be able to do this, and then gain the money back, because then they are full-time students, will get more Chapter 70 money. So really what we should be doing right now is make a motion and then discuss this, but we're discussing it right now.
Well,
So
I think
I'll-
we might not necessarily come to a vote tonight, but we've under a deadline for preparing the budget. But, so anything else, Mary?
No, I'd like to make a motion, though.
Mary, you know I'm not gonna prevent you from doing a motion, because I know it's your thing. You love the motion.
I do like
Make the motion, Mary.
Well, because Robert's Rules of Order, that
Yeah.
a motion should be on the table for us to discuss. It doesn't mean we have to vote on it. It would be good if someone seconded it, and if nobody seconds it, then we wouldn't discuss it. But that's what we would usually do. So I would like to make a motion that we vote to implement funding for full-day kindergarten for FY '21.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it for purpose of discussion, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Discussion, Mike.
Thank you. When I think about the same discussions that we had last year, it felt like the schedule that we had put in place was, it felt to me like a breakthrough. It felt like a really nice compromise that we had allocated, I believe, $200,000 and then an additional $100 from a line item in the budget, which effectively gets us about halfway there. And I'm personally very, very comfortable with that schedule. I want to echo Don Lowe's concerns about accelerating this schedule. We work collaboratively on a frequent basis with other towns, on a daily basis with our administrators, and I feel like it's important to sort of reciprocate in return that generosity and sustain that sort of goodwill. I think that that's really important. I am always thinking about OPEB. I know that this is not, at least I suspect it's not a popular opinion on this committee, but I've heard it said several times in several ways that we have been assiduously setting money aside for OPEB. I respectfully disagree. I don't think that we are doing nearly enough to address that liability. Pat, I just want to thank you. You provided me with evaluation results from 2018, our most recent valuation. And in that valuation, our liability went up by more than $500,000 in a single year. And so that OPEB liability is growing, by all accounts, by leaps and bounds. I also think about last year at the end of the budget season, we took out money from E&D. Is that right? We took out. Did we take out money from E&D at the last moment where we decided that we didn't want to?
We increased the amount that we use.
Please speak up, please. So what's the?
We increased the amount. We had started with $650,000, and we increased that amount.
We increased the amount in E&D.
In E&D as a funding source,
Okay.
revenue source
Correct.
for the budget.
Okay. And that's what you're.
Right, I shifted.
Okay.
Yep. No, talking about the budget. So, I think that there are a lot of ways that we can spend this this newfound money. I am very comfortable with what looks to be, if we maintain that line item, a 3-year schedule to get to where we need to be. I think we have, I think collectively, at least last year's iteration of the school committee, agreed that that was a fair schedule, and I'd prefer to stick to that schedule.
Steve?
Okay. We decided last year how we wanted to fund this. I have no problem sticking with that funding schedule. And like what Mike said, that OPEB thing hanging over us, which can be immediately charged to us if the accounting board decides to change the way they want to look at it, is over $35 million in unfunded benefits. Okay, we have how much in there? Less than $500,000, I believe. That's kind of a pretty big hammer hanging over our heads that could come down anytime the accounting people decide they want to change the way they approach that liability. Okay? That's number one. Number two, each year we see if we have $30,000 or $40,000 left in the budget to help modernize our fleet of vehicles. We're saying now we have $360,000 available from last year from medical insurance changes. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is not the first year we have had kind of a bonus from changes in medical insurance.
That's because
this is the second year, right?
That's
At
because
least I
we
know? Okay.
Exactly, 2 years in a
Okay.
row.
So, but it's 2 years in a row. That's where our found money has come from.
Yes, that, and we had some additional revenue.
So while I respect Donlow's appeal, and I don't think we can avoid looking at that. It might be minimal that we can give. Let's say if we give $50,000 back to each town. It's very, very small piece of our budget, very, very small piece of their budget. But it's a token that we appreciate their problems and we're willing to do what we can to help. I would respectfully submit, I'm not going to make a proposal or a motion, but I think we should seriously consider returning $50,000 to each of the 3 towns as a token of our understanding of their situation, and the balance goes into OPEB. It's a $35 million hammer hanging over our head that sometime some school board, not while I'm still here, but probably as some school board down the line, is going to have to fully face. We set out a schedule last year. We all agreed to it. It was reasonable then. I don't see any reason why it's not as reasonable tonight. Thank you.
Other comments?
So I have a different take on it. Understanding that the balance that we will need to get through that gap year grows every year, a 3-year schedule isn't accurate into the future. Like, that's going to keep growing. It's going to be more than $100,000 every year in order to create the balance if we want to do it in 3 years, or perhaps we keep extending it out to 4 or 5 or who knows how many more years. To me, because we would be getting more money from Chapter 70 that we would be paying in tuition, it feels like saving money to those families, not necessarily to the district, but in a way, if we're taking more money in, then we can use the excess for future things moving forward. Maybe not a lot of money, but that can then go back into the district for other reasons. And because that we have a current budget line item, that line item doesn't necessarily disappear. That can be moved towards OPEB. We also have an OPEB budget line item. We can move it towards that. We can move it towards something else. That money can now be funneled. It's like paying off a credit card. Pay off for the first credit card and then funnel the money that you were paying towards that credit card onto something else until the ball keeps rolling. So plus, knowing that it's not the full amount of the surplus that we would need, this doesn't seem like it's a black and white all or nothing decision to me. It seems like there's room to do a lot of different things. So I'm kind of in the camp of yeah, we said this is something that we wanted to do, particularly right now with the district improvement plan being a big social emotional learning push. To me, like, offering free full day kindergarten to all the kids across the district fits in with that. And so I kind of see it from the perspective of, like, okay, let's get this done, and then let's take the funds that we were spending on it and start doing other things with it.
Mike?
Just as a point of clarification, I believe that the liability is not $35 million. I believe it's nearly $43 million. And if we are going to use the metaphor for credit cards, a $43 million bill is quite a bit larger than a $600,000 bill. And remember, that growth from one year to the next was just that, was $500,000. So yes, we could take that line item and eventually
redirect it into OPEB. But that was part of the compromise that was sort of suggested, that we keep that line item there. Once we've fully funded our responsibility for full day K, then that would get transferred over to OPEB as sort of an annual input. So just a quick response.
Steve.
Just one point of order. I believe if it's a stabilization fund, we can't shift that money around. It's designed for a specific purpose. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, it is.
Leah. Oh, then Leah, then Elaine.
Well, I just wanted a clarifying question. So the Lancaster growth, if you could go to the next slide. It seems to me that you're going to need an additional kindergarten teacher in Mary Rowlandson. And that's the only place that you'll need an additional teacher. Right, that's correct. And so is because the 615,000 that you're projecting is higher than I remember it being. Does that take into account that additional teacher?
That's exactly what it is. Yes, it does.
Okay, and so that's interesting. And then I guess the other thing that I don't understand. The accounting board, could you educate me for a moment? The accounting board that Steve referenced could drop the hammer on us at any point in time and kind of call in the loan, right?
That's not
Steve,
really the way
excuse me.
it works.
Steve,
They
excuse
change-
me. I would need to recognize you, but I know Elaine had a comment.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Okay, she yields.
Thank you. I appreciate it, the lady from Stow. The accountants who recommend how funds are classified, what we can do, what you can't do with funds in certain places, 2 years ago changed the way that they said you had to deal with OPEB. Is that correct? I'm asking our business manager. They changed the way you had to deal with the liability of OPEB. Is that not correct?
Yes, they changed the reporting requirements
Right.
on our financial statements.
Right, so that they could change the way we have to report it. Again, there's nothing that says they will, but there's nothing that says they won't. And at some point, they may say, you must fully recognize, as has been done in other states and other governmental agencies, you must fully recognize that as a liability on your balance sheet. Is that
And
not
I believe if it is recognized as a liability on our
but
balance
not fully?
sheet.
I don't believe it's the 40-some-odd million dollars is not fully recognized.
It is.
It
It is.
is?
It's in our
Okay.
financial statements
Okay,
now.
then one would think that would affect our bond rating. Okay. All right. Then I stand corrected, which is
Leah.
fine.
Oh,
I yield the remainder of my time back to the lady from Stow.
Well, I think Leah is ready
Well,
to
I
go.
guess my question that I was trying to get at, and I wonder from you, if they were to force us to recognize it, it would be something that they force every district to
Every
recognize.
district.
And every district has a similar liability?
Yes, there are some of the more affluent communities have funded their OPEB liability at quite a higher amount, higher percentage of it has been funded.
Okay. So I guess my final comment, I'm sorry, but my final comment is I'm very concerned about the line item that is legal fees and what kinds of costs are coming around the corner that we've yet to understand after what has happened at the high school. So I wouldn't be comfortable voting on Mary's motion until I understand what's coming at us in that way.
Mary.
I just wanted to go back to the OPEB and having been at the MIAA, the MASC conference, and hearing that most districts, there might be some higher wealth, but most districts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are exactly where we are, Steve, so we would not be alone. And this whole conversation has been Not so much about kindergarten. I mean, and it does have to do with funding, but we're bringing in all these other aspects to this. And so I'd really like to get back to the motion that is on the table about kindergarten funding. I hope that more people would vote for this now while the money is there now. We're not talking about a huge sum that's going to make a tremendous difference. And I do want, I listened to Don Lowe's idea and certainly want to be responsive to the town too. Our first obligation, I feel, is to the students of this district and to the families. And I also think about the fact maybe we don't want young families to move into Bolton and Stow and Lancaster, because if they're deciding about living someplace, most any other place, 95% of the districts, they can come in with they finally are able to get the house, and they can go someplace where it's full tuition free for full day kindergarten. And I just feel that that's a disservice. We need young families. I don't want to discourage them from moving into Bolton, Stow, and Lancaster. But maybe other people are just looking at the money aspect and saying, hey, good, we won't have young families. I mean, that sounds, I hope that's, I like to presume good intentions, but this makes me wonder a little bit, are we really thinking about the children and how important it is? We're going to need to do a lot of thinking about the benefits that we can bring to the high school, and we will. And but for this particular motion, it's our youngest students, our youngest learners, at a time when things are vital, and it's not them or the high school, it's them and the high school. And so I would just ask people to really think about this from a student point of view.
I think too, from my perspective, by going this route, there brings a certain amount of equity to all children across our district. So I just want to put that out there as well.
Other comments? Pat, can you remind us what the schedule is that we decided upon last year? I know it was to get to a point after how many years? So based on the schedule, what would be the, so what would we be looking at, FY 22, 23?
22, I think, was the year.
Again, just to keep in mind that our job is just to bring iterations to you for your consideration. I'm not fully supporting anything, or our job is to bring it forward for further discussion.
I would like, excuse me.
Yes.
I would like to move that the motion be tabled.
Can I say something? I've been waiting. Thank you. No, I just want to sum up where I think that we are. And so there is a feeling that we created a schedule, we should stick to it. And then with this surplus, use it to perhaps give money back to the towns, certainly put more money in our OPEB trust, and just stick with the idea that we are going to have, so this is 1920, 2021, 2022, 3 years down the road, have the funding to support a gap year as per our plan. The other thing I'm hearing is that there's an opportunity here to have this program, have full day K, to have equity. The tuition doesn't come close to sustaining full day K, and this would be an opportunity to fund it, and then have other monies in our budget to put toward OPEB and other things. So that's the division I see. Is that accurate?
Oh, sorry. One other timing consideration is that the families would need to know as they are registering for kindergarten whether they're signing up for full day paid, full day free, choosing half day. Like there's a certain timing to that as well.
is there information that the committee would need in order to make an informed decision? Leah.
I'm not sure how possible this is, but I am very interested in understanding, and I know we'll get to this later, I'm very interested in understanding what the costs are associated with the external investigation and various other things related to the most recent situation at the high school. Okay. And I would really need that information before I could vote on this.
Okay.
As much as I appreciate full day kindergarten and just got done paying for my last child, I am philosophically in favor of this for other people, but I think it would be irresponsible for us to vote without that information.
Other information that folks would want to consider before? Any other information that you would want to consider before either continuing the discussion or moving to vote? Right, but I want... No, but what I want to get at is if there is additional information that people need before they can make a decision. Leah has expressed something. Is there other information that folks are looking for? Okay, so there is a motion on the table to table the discussion. On the floor, thank you. There's a motion on the table to floor the discussion, or just the opposite. Do we have a second for that motion?
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor of tabling? Opposed? Okay, so and Brooke has a question.
I guess I'm wondering too, what would you like from us? Would you like to see other scenarios? Would you like us to revisit the first one to make sure you feel current with that? What else can we bring you, other than these the small one-offs, the specifics? Do you need some more scenarios here that we can help support?
Excuse me. So no, I think that we have a lot of new members on this committee this year, and I think a review of the plan that we put in place and what the schedule is would be helpful. Leah has requested some information relative to costs, unanticipated costs for this year. Joe, did you have something? Oh, Mary, go ahead then.
Okay, and what would be the costs as we go forward if we were not to do this? You know, just at least estimations of how much each year.
Right, we get those numbers from the DESE, so we would have to be looking to them. I don't think that we could necessarily forecast them. I would want to make sure that the DESE runs the numbers for us so that we're working with good numbers.
Anything else? Joe?
No, I concur with the superintendent's assessment and her recommendation, and I share the same philosophical ideals as my colleague from Stow over here, that I would support full-day kindergarten. But I do agree with you, Madam Chairman. You know, I'm fairly new to this district, and you know, at this juncture, I kind of agree with Steve. I'd like to give this further thought before we agree on that. So I will state that I am fully in favor of full-day kindergarten, but given the economic constraints at this time, I'd just like to give it a further thought. That's all.
Okay, and to either Mary or Elaine, I can't remember who said it, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we'll be setting tuition rates if we don't go with full-day K, and that we do that soon, don't we? So let's look at what's on our, at the end of the meeting, look at what's on our agenda for the 4th, and then would that be enough time to get information?
Yeah, I think that, yes, I think that.
And could we get it to folks ahead of time so they can look at it prior to the meeting? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the negotiating subcommittee and organization. Oh, thank you, Pat. Anne Marie, are you going to talk to us about that? don't roll backwards. We just
No, I know. Someone's going to catch me if I do. Yeah, that's right. That's right. The Gaga pit, isn't that what they call it? Each team, each negotiating team makes up the, picks their own people for the team. Last time we had, I think, 3 school committee people. We had a town administrator, and we had Brooke, and Mike was our chief spokesperson. The question most often asked is, what's the time commitment? It's ridiculous. When it gets to be negotiating time, it's every week or every other week for a couple of hours, and it's a late night. We usually start about 3:30, 4 o'clock, have a little something to eat, and then we go through till 8:30, 9 o'clock sometimes. So it's not the kind of thing that you can drop in, come this week and then I'm going to miss next week or anything like that. So really it would be up to the group who they would like to put on the negotiating committee.
And I also want to point out, too, thank you for mentioning about the time commitment. If we end up going to a mediation or an arbitration process, then your time commitment is even that much more. So it is quite a commitment, depending on how the negotiation. Of course, we'd like to think that the negotiations will go smoothly and quickly, but every now and again, then, I know last year I think we went to mediation last year. We had a mediator come in, as I recall, and work with us there. So just do keep that in mind as you're thinking about your commitment.
So do we have to vote on members to that committee? We just appoint?
That's right, yes.
Okay, because I know that I expressed an interest. Steve had expressed an interest. And Mike, did you? I inquired. I don't think I have. Okay. Mary, are you interested? Okay. So ideally, we have one person from each town, and so it's Steve, me, and Mary. Okay. And then you'll be in touch with next steps.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda as regards the school superintendent, consideration of placement on paid administrative leave. I want to acknowledge the input that we received from many people, and also acknowledge that there is a concern that the superintendent's presence will impede the investigation that we are going to conduct. There is a feeling from some that the superintendent should be placed on paid administrative leave, and I needed to do some work in order to understand what that is so that I could explain it to you folks. I initially reached out to Anne Marie because she's the HR director, but I also checked in with a colleague who is an HR director in another district. Paid administrative leave is used if there is evidence of wrongdoing on the part of someone, and one of the following factors are present. So the first factor would be the person is accused of doing harm to another person or persons, and they need to be removed so as to prevent further harm. 2, there is a concern that the person's continued presence will hinder an investigation. Or 3, you believe that the person may be ultimately be terminated, and their presence during the investigation makes it less credible that the person is doing such harm that they need to be dismissed. So this is a decision that the school committee would have to make. We supervise and evaluate the superintendent, and so there would have to be discussion about doing this. I do want to remind us, our group, that on the outset, the school committee has said that it will have oversight of the independent third-party investigation. So Brooke is not running, no one from the school district is running it. This school committee is running the investigation, and we'll hear more about the firm and hiring somebody in a few minutes. Also, that if the investigator discovers facts which raise questions about the superintendent's actions, the school committee would take action. So I just wanted to tee this up And if somebody wanted to make a motion so that we could engage in discussion, the motion would be to place the school superintendent on paid administrative leave because we have evidence of wrongdoing and that there is a concern that her continued presence will hinder an investigation. I'm
so moved.
So moved. Second? Thank you. So I'll open the floor to discussion. Mike.
I suppose I'll start. If you can afford me a little bit of latitude here, the past week specifically, 2 weeks, 6 weeks have been difficult, I would say, for everyone on this committee, everyone sitting here on this stage tonight. The past week specifically has been nothing less than grueling. I tend to perseverate over things, and this is a really good example of perseveration to the highest order. Instead of feeling like what we're trying to do is what is best for kids, it seems like the decision we're making is what is least harmful for kids, what is least impactful for kids, because no matter what we decide, we are going to make a tremendous wave. So I think of this conversation as really being broken up into two categories. The first category is asking ourselves what kind of a disruption would placing our superintendent on administrative leave cause. Certainly it would result in a leadership vacuum, particularly if in the period of time where the superintendent is on leave, there's a crisis. A facilities crisis, for example. We're right in the middle of budget season. And as someone pointed out as I was walking in, this truly does affect everybody. This affects our entire district. And it occurred to me this evening as I was continuing to think about it, that there's lots of conversation about culture and mistrust, leadership, urgency. And as far as I know, this seems to be isolated to one building in the district at the high school. I can speak to Florence, Sawyer, and Emerson as being having a fantastic culture. And I think that that's a data point, for me at least, to consider. On the other hand, I would ask what kind of a disruption to the investigation would a sitting superintendent cause? Will we be effectively able to evaluate the processes and procedures that may or may not have been followed? If to some degree or another we can agree that the superintendent is the primary driver of culture. Would the decision fundamentally clarify the conclusions in our investigations, or would it be symbolic? And is a symbolic move enough? Or does it justify such a dramatic decision? And I'll honestly say I don't have the answers to a lot of these questions. I've really, really struggled with this. Like members of our community, I am sad, I am angry, I'm really frustrated. Personally, I want to hear, going back to my colleague's point about engaging with students, I want to hear that the superintendent will sit with our students and say, this happened. It happened while I was here. I'm going to make it right. Our teenagers, and I know that I don't have teenagers yet, but I work with them. I've worked with them every day for 13 years. And I know that teenagers are incredibly intelligent, empathetic, they are savvy, they are socially connected like you wouldn't believe, they are articulate, and they can be brutally, brutally honest. And that honesty is needed to inform how we are going to make decisions moving forward. And I truly think it's in our best interest, this is just my opinion, if we engage with them directly, not having an outside source, not having a team come in separate, saying you and we're all on the same team, this all happened to us, we need to make this right. And I get frustrated that that hasn't happened.
this is our conversation. Please refrain from outbursts such as that. Thank you. Thank you. No, keep going.
Sorry.
No?
So one of the reasons why this has been such a difficult interval of time is because we only meet once every 2 weeks. And it's been really difficult to have to wait to hear from my colleagues. I don't know what anyone else is thinking. I don't know if I'm on an island or if there are 6 other members that are on this island with me. I have no idea. So I am very eager to hear their opinions. I hope people can be honest, and that I hope everyone can respect that honesty is going to be the only thing that is going to get us through this. And so I'm sure I have other things to add, but I'd like to open that up to my colleagues.
Thank you. Other comments? Leah.
So I think that one of my biggest questions is what does the external investigation entail? How long will it be?
That will be determined when we bring someone on to do it, and that typically the chair is the point person with whatever attorney works for the district, and I would ask someone from the school committee to join me as in partnering to determine that. So right now we don't know, but if we can, we're going to talk about it during the subcommittee updates. That we should have a determination, I think, within less than a week, if we can meet with whomever we hire. So we don't have that information yet, but we will. But yeah. So talk to me.
Well, I think that part of the decision-making process has to be about impact, and I think that having a power vacuum is a bad thing. I, like you, Mike, have worked in a high school for 19 years, and it's really harmful to have power vacuums. So can we maybe talk about what the leadership matrix is going to look like tomorrow and over the course of Principal Domenico's absence? What does it look like then? And then if the superintendent was to go on leave, what would it look like then?
So you want speculation?
No, I mean, well, with Paul gone, who's running the high school?
Okay, I'm going to let.
Right, thank you. So I thought we had mentioned this at the other night. We did, right? Right, okay, thank you. We did mention that, right. So Steve Cullinane has graciously stepped up to the plate at this point in time in terms of taking on the acting principal position. And Patrick Perkins, I know I saw him, he's here as well. And so we've added some time from him. Right now, you'll recall that he's .4 at Hale. And so we've bumped up his time in the interim to be over at the high school right now. Beth Pratt stays on there.
And so he is at Hale still .4?
Right, that's correct.
Okay, and then I know that there was maybe some speculation about Todd filling in a little bit at the high school.
We're not there. We've run into some glitches with that possibility, with that as a possibility. So we have nothing more to report out right now that's solid in that area.
And so I think that the next question that needs to be asked is, Brooke, if you were to go on leave, who would fill your power vacuum? Because I happen to know that you have a very important, very, very large job that needs to be done.
Well, oh, sorry. Do you want to respond?
So the school committee would make a determination. I think that we have to look at, and we've been through this before, and we did have an assistant superintendent who was an acting superintendent, but was not qualified to serve as an interim. And so it would be, we would have to discuss what we would do. It is a big job. And so that would be for us to decide if we engage an interim. There's a process for doing that. I think that for a short period of time, Dr. Maguire, might be able to assist, but his job is complex. We're looking for him to do continued work or work in some way at the high school. So there's a, we're down one administrator at the high school. What happens if we're down one administrator in central office? Things won't get done. But for me, if I can add to this, the crux of it in putting somebody on leave is that someone has done something wrong, and we have evidence of that, and that because of that, they can't be here during an investigation because it might compromise it. If that were the case, if there were evidence of wrongdoing, then it would be incumbent upon us to act and then deal with the consequences. So at this point in time, I have no evidence, no facts, no direct evidence that supports that the superintendent did anything wrong. Now, as I mentioned, and we all said, we've said it many times, we're having somebody come in and do an investigation independent of administration. We are directing it. If something comes up from that calls into question the actions of the superintendent, then we will act. We've said that from day one. The findings of that investigation will inform our next steps. So I'm more concerned that we put somebody on leave, and the implication is that they did something wrong, and because of that, their presence will impede the investigation. That's my opinion. Somebody, I'd like to let Mary.
I don't know of any facts that would warrant putting a superintendent on leave. And I also consider that our superintendent being on leave is not in the best interest of the students, faculty, staff, or administration. As we've been discussing, with the principal being on leave, we are stretching our administrative staff, and there are always implications for that. And so I am not cognizant of any facts that would warrant putting the superintendent on leave.
Elaine.
Yeah, I mean, I have a comment that I want to make, and then I have a question that might be a point of order question.
Sure.
And that is, so I have been racking my brain about this as well. Like, I feel for you, Mike, because I feel like I've been doing the exact same thing, thinking about it constantly. And two kind of lenses have come to mind of how I keep thinking about this. One is that no matter how we want to, we cannot go back and change anything that has happened in the past, right? We have to think about this from this day forward. What are the actions and the steps that we can take that will help moving forward, or in some cases do the least harm moving forward? And the investigation will look back, but we need to be thinking about what we can do today to help move things forward. And then the other lens is that for a long time I was thinking about this as a black and white issue. This is all or nothing. And I've sort of come to the realization that that is not necessarily the case. So yes, you can put someone on administrative leave and they are out completely. It's a different thing to me to say, continue to do your job as possible, but should you attend challenge day? Like, God, no. In my opinion, that would be a mistake. Not necessarily as something about administrative leave and not being allowed in the high school, but are there certain things that are more sensitive to the students there than others? Like, yes, those two things are not mutually exclusive in my brain. I really liked what you said, Mike, about having those honest conversations and sitting down and saying, like, we are in this together. We're going to work it out. And I think a lot of people need to come together to have those conversations. But I disagree with you a little bit in the timing of it all. Because in the short term, when we're talking about the length of this investigation, however long that may take, I I think it would be wise to give the students whatever kind of forum they say they need to be able to voice their opinions. And I'm not sure that sitting down directly with the superintendent is the way to do that right now. I think maybe in the future, yes, but not right now. So again, that doesn't, to me, that's completely different than saying somebody should go on leave where they don't have the ability to build a budget. They don't have the ability to do compliance reporting and working with the state on reimbursements for Medicaid and things like that. To me, those two things are not mutually exclusive. So that's what I wanted to say. My point of order is Mike and I have been working a lot on with the personnel subcommittee on the status of the investigation. Would it be possible to give that update in the context of this discussion? Because there's not concrete answers that some might be looking for, but I do think there's more information that would provide more context around this.
I don't have any objection to that.
Thank you, Elaine. I want to adjust a couple things that have been said. The first thing is I really do think that the sooner we can engage our kids in a forum where they can choose to come or choose not to come gives them their voices back. And if I've heard from one kid that says that, I've heard from too many, that they are not being heard, they are not being respected. And I think that at this point, if we've got students standing up, willing to stand up in a room full of adults that are tasked with making decisions for them, and they're willing to have productive communication, if we don't grant them that honor, if we don't lift that muzzle from them, then that will rapidly devolve into unproductive, or I would even say destructive behavior. And I think we need to be very careful about that.
I just want to comment. I don't see why we can't do that. I think that's separate from what the conversation is about putting the superintendent on academic leave. I mean, I know that we weren't in this situation when we had the conversation at school committee about student voice and decision making. And we spent a lot of time talking about the policy as it exists and how it doesn't fit with what we would like to see our engagement be with kids. So I don't see why we can't do that, but it's separate than this.
Certainly,
and I'm not seeing
just as a counterpoint, that's all. Just
okay.
as a counterpoint.
But Mike, I mean, the principal's in the audience. We can not let him leave afterwards and see what he can do.
And if I can just pose one thing to the committee, I'm going to read the statement that was sent out by the superintendent on November 7, 2019. To prevent distraction and ensure that faculty and students can focus respectively on teaching and learning, Nashoba Regional High School Principal Paul DiDomenico has worked collaboratively with the district to reach the decision that he will begin paid administrative leave for the duration of that review. This is not disciplinary action. Now, is there something fundamentally different in spirit or tone or the presumption of guilt or innocence when we are talking about the potential for putting our superintendent on leave? Is there something different in that statement?
Yes.
And I don't know the answer.
Paul,
I'm asking.
yes, yeah, and Paul requested a leave and was granted it. The superintendent isn't requesting a leave. We have been asked as a committee to consider putting the superintendent on paid administrative leave. What I have shared with you is what the criteria is, what it means when you put somebody on paid administrative leave. It's a point of information, and that's what we have to decide. But in doing that, the assumption is that there was there was wrongdoing, and that because of that, this is based on, it's a personnel practice, legitimate personnel practice that has its foundation in a federal regulation about disciplinary action for personnel. So that's all I'm saying, that's the criteria for that. And Paul asked for the leave, was granted it.
So if I can just respond to that.
I think the salient point here was that in that message, the tone was very neutral. And the salient point was this is not a disciplinary action. To be clear that this was not a disciplinary action. And again, Elaine and I have been working pretty aggressively to accelerate this process of finding an attorney that could perform an investigation. And one thing that we talked about yesterday or the day before, and this is the driver of a lot of my feelings, is that we have one chance to get this investigation right. And we have one chance to set the conditions that are going to legitimize this investigation in the eyes of the committee, the eyes of the community. And if we don't do it right, there are no second chances. There's no, well, we'll try it again. If we are being thoughtful, I think we want to remove all shadows of doubt and open the pathway for an investigation that will eliminate the possibility that someone can come back on the other end and scrutinize our approach.
So I'd just like to go back to all of our remembering that what is very complex here is that there is a criminal case as well as the investigation, so the more educational investigation. So I could understand initially that teachers and faculty, because in our society, someone is presumed innocent until they're proven guilty. So even whatever, felonies, et cetera, there is still an alleged aspect to that. And so to help students, and first of all, I want to say too, I should have started with this, I am an advocate for student voice, and we could go back to the school committee meeting, but my whole career in education has been focused on students and on student voice. And wanting to hear from students, I absolutely do. Because there is a criminal case, it would be very important for parameters for students to understand that this is a situation where students could actually, it could be a learning situation for students, because any kind of discussion, like everything in the world about this, is not necessarily permissible in terms of talking when you've got a criminal aspect to things. So, as you said, Mike, and I worked with high school students and taught them for a long time, they are so intelligent and so savvy and so honest and so oftentimes altruistic, reminding us of how we all should be. That's what students are about. But we need to, they're smart enough to understand if we explain to them that there could be parameters of what they could talk about, and that with criminal proceedings going on, some of this will eventually be settled, and then there'll be even more opportunity for open discussion at the high school. So this is complex.
Thank you. Other comments? Leah.
To Elaine's point about this being kind of a gray situation, so as the external investigation unfolds, will they be providing us with regular updates, anything that kind of comes to light? And the second part of my question is, how much of this report, this investigation, will actually be able to be told to us and told to the public?
I think we really have to talk to the investigator to answer your questions, and I'm sorry, I know that's frustrating, and I wish we had more answers, but I think that those are good questions, and that would be part of the planning that we would have to do. Leah.
And so there are just so many question marks as to how we should proceed. I think that I would love to hear from Elaine and Mike about the other law firm in this context, so that we can understand, at the next school committee meeting, are they going to be sitting with us, and can they advise us? Because I'm not totally sure that you can advise us on things of this nature, but I would like to have a knowledgeable person say to me, it's going to take this long. We can give you an update after day 1. We can go after this information first and then provide you with information as we go, so that if there is any information that we can be privy to, it will be made known to us.
I think that's reasonable, and I think the first thing we have to do is engage someone and then invite them to a meeting. Now, do you want that information before the investigation starts, or do you want them to start it? Mike?
Elaine, feel free to chime in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I call Steve?
Sure.
Steve hasn't said anything yet.
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask Elaine or Mike, where are we in this selection process?
Okay, why don't we take a beat and let them fill us in, and that we won't have to do it under subcommittee reports.
So I'll try to answer as many of those questions as I can. I can appreciate the value of them as we're getting through this. Some of those questions were questions that we asked to all of the final candidates. Elaine, please correct me if I misspeak. But we did ask about advising us on whether or not he felt that a sitting superintendent typically does impede on an investigation. He said two things. The first thing was that he could probably use about 5 or 6 hours to gather some initial data and then provide an informed recommendation, although it certainly is up to the school committee to make that decision. He also said that in an investigation that's associated with any administrator, typically but not always, again, correct me if I'm wrong, typically or not always, they would step aside for the length of the investigation. What were some more of your questions? I felt like I could answer several of them.
Is very important, because just providing us with some initial information so that we can make informed judgments. As much as I appreciate my neighbors' points of view, and I've heard them on every end of the spectrum, trust me, right? Perhaps you feel the same way. Definitely more on one end of the spectrum, but I have heard points of view on all ends of the spectrum. I have my own personal point of view, but what we do here is not necessarily about what we personally believe. It needs to be an informed judgment based upon information and liability, frankly. So I would like to speak with the attorney. I would like to have him advise us as to how we should proceed. So the duration was another piece, and I'm losing
There was a question that, I'm sorry, is it okay if I respond? There was a question you asked earlier about how long an investigation of this type might take, and I think we asked that question. And the impression that we got was that it was on the order of dozens of hours, not hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, the initial answer was always, it's too soon to tell, you know, and also depends on how you define your scope. Are you defining it narrowly to be the administration's response to this one incident, or are you broadening it, or are you doing it in phases? Like, those are all considerations that the committee needs to decide on, because we would give the direction to the attorney. The other thing I would say is that, so we did 3 phone interviews as like a final set of interviews with law firms, and pretty much all of the attorneys, and I know we have 2 sitting at the table, were very hesitant to say they would make judgment recommendations. They said, we'll lay out the facts in front of you, and with that 5 to 6 hours sort of initial gathering of information, they would sort of lay that out and say, you know, the choice is up to you. They'd be very hesitant to say, this is what I would do. But I think that's what lawyers do, is they like to lay out the facts and then leave the judgments to whoever the deciding body is. So I wouldn't expect someone to come in and say, this is what needs to happen.
Joseph?
Yeah, speaking of facts.
Oh, do you have the mic?
I really hate using this thing. Speaking of facts, I'm sorry to bring this up. Ms. Maston is not here this evening, so we don't have a recording secretary. Do we have somebody taking the minutes? Because
yes, we do.
Okay. Perhaps, I'm going to old school, Anne-Marie. What exactly was the motion again?
The motion was to The, oh, do you have it written down? Because can you read it?
Okay, so I guess my question would be to my colleague from Bolton. Here, you're suggesting, and again, I ask through the chair, that you're suggesting that we make a decision tonight based on substantive issues attendant to the ongoing situation as opposed to procedural ones. And what I mean by that is that a lot of the communications we've been receiving regarding this has been such that as a matter of course and as a matter of procedure, you know, we should consider placing the superintendent on leave by virtue of the fact that her continued presence in the position of superintendent would purportedly create a chilling effect over the investigation. But it sounds to me the motion is more of a substantive matter because it said there's evidence of potential wrongdoing. I just want to state for the record, and I think that, you know, we all have to, somewhere along the line when you decide to run for elected office, you have to take a position on something. And I'm going to take a position on this tonight. I am not in favor of placing the superintendent on leave at this time. And simply because of the fact that this matter has been going on for approximately, let's call it 3 weeks. It came to my attention approximately 3 weeks ago that one of our teachers was being arraigned in Clinton District Court. I was provided with a copy of the affidavit. It seems to be the genesis of this whole matter. And in that whole period of time, that whole 3 weeks, I have not heard one iota of evidence against the superintendent. So if the motion is such that we're going to consider this on substantive grounds, I'd like to say, I have not heard any of the substantive grounds. I've heard nothing in that regard. And I would be uncomfortable in voting on anything until such time as I heard that. So that's my position on it. It may be my Waterloo politically, but I'm sorry. As an attorney, I just can't abide by the allegations of wrongdoing when I have not, as one member of this committee, have not heard one iota of substantiating evidence against the superintendent. Thank you.
Other comments? Oh, Mary.
So I just want to get back to the subcommittee. I don't really understand the subcommittee report. You know, where did you get the names? Who did you contact? And then he said, I mean, I think the whole committee should know the exact process. How did you get the references? What exactly did you do? And where are we? It just seems vague.
Okay, Mike, you want to report on that?
I'm happy to. Can I just comment on Joe's comment? I actually agree that there's no data to inform us that wrongdoing has occurred. I actually agreed on the second of those 3 points, which was, would you mind reading that for me one more time, Kathy?
What, these?
Yes, the third point.
The third?
Sorry, the second point, rather.
The second point. So both of these conditions, there has to be wrongdoing and then one of these 3 things. There is a concern that the person's continued presence will hinder the investigation.
So it's an and statement and not an or statement.
Right.
Okay. I'm certainly able to report out on the process if we're comfortable doing so at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. So we solicited feedback from multiple parties. One was from the Bolton Town Administrator, Don Lowe. One was from our field representative, Dorothy Presser, from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. And one was actually a Bolton Town resident who's had experience in the field. We initially started with 12 recommendations. We pared those recommendations down for a number of reasons. The initial paring down, either there was a conflict of interest, there was a lack of availability, lack of comfortability with the type of investigation. So we called, most of them had an initial consult, and through multiple phone calls from the end of last week. Actually, it started Thursday morning after our school committee meeting, so it was right from the jump we started this.
I just want to say that Mike and Elaine, he's right, got right off the dime, and within like hours they had done a lot of work and have worked, made me aware that they had a recommendation. for tonight, and Mike was able to get me the recommendations, which I contacted, and I've spoken, references, I'm sorry, spoke to one, but just over the course of being here, the 3 more popped up, so I can have those.
Yeah.
Yep. But thank you for your hard work in doing this and diligence.
Thank you. So we narrowed the field down, sort of an initial narrowing, and we ended up with 3 finalists that seemed like they were both comfortable, of course reputable, had experience, and plenty of experience in this sort of investigation. We had a 30-minute phone call with a list of questions that were vetted through multiple different parties. I think we had about 6 or 7 different questions.
Do you have the questions so you can share them with the committee?
Yeah, I have my shorthand notes of the questions, but I'm not sure that they're written out as eloquently as they stated them. Because
I'd have to
Okay,
look.
I just think that it would be good for the committee to hear the questions.
So anyways, one thing that Elaine said is that we both felt lucky to have the luxury of choice, as she said it. We really had 3 outstanding final candidates, several of which, again, were endorsed by our field rep and our town administrator. The final decision that we made was based on their specific experience. They've been in the field for 30 years, their breadth of knowledge, the clarity of their responses. And I would say that the final piece that really, I guess, compelled us to choose this final candidate was their ability to communicate on a non-clinical level, just sort of on an individual one-on-one level. He seemed very real and very cogent in that way. So. The recommendation is for Tim Norris of Norris Murray Pelican LLC out of Norwood, Mass. Am I saying something?
No,
incorrectly?
I had a different name. Let me just double check, 'cause I'm sorry, I don't have it at the tip here. Rob Hillman
Hmm.
as the person, and the.
Hmm.
So I had, who did I get the recommendation?
From Tim, those are Tim Norris. I will double check. Yeah, I will double check.
The person I talked to about Rob Hillman.
It could, well, he also sent recommendations.
He did send his references
Yeah,
after the interview.
but they were we actually didn't reach out to him for his references, but I can forward you the references again. Okay. Okay. So no, but it was Tim Norris of Norris Murray Pelican LLC out of Norwood, Mass. And again, I'll get those references to you. I'll make sure that they're the right ones.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary.
So we vote on this. So yes, but we vote on that. And so I would want to see more information than this. I would want to see the references. Just hearing that you don't have this is pretty important. And I mean, this is the first. I'm really grateful, Mike and Elaine, for the work that you did. But just to hear it sort of without, I'd like to look up some of this. I'd like to have information. This is the way we usually make decisions. Yes, we have heard that to move forward as quickly as possible, but Kathy, you were calling the references. Is that true on this?
Evidently calling the
Wrong references. So there's a reason right there that I'm not comfortable making this decision tonight and just saying to go with one particular firm without the references being called and without just the names of these, so that we could look this up too, because this could have been, and I'm not ungrateful to the subcommittee, but we're a small committee. We could have done this whole thing ourselves in public session. And so this is the first time hearing this. I need more information.
Other thoughts?
A motion could be made to accept the recommendation pending
references.
Okay, Kevin, is that acceptable? Oh, excuse me. About, not about the lawyer, about the administrative leave. Oh, okay. I just need to ask. So could we, when we get to the point of Mike and Elaine have a recommendation, could we vote on it pending, satisfactory recommendations, or should we not do that? Okay. Okay, Mike?
One of the things that Elaine and I were a little bit reticent about was the prospect of not having a recommendation for today and then having to push off that recommendation until our next meeting, which is December 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially not having the investigation until mid-December.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the reason why this was such a labor-intensive, energy-intensive, time-intensive process was we were trying to be especially sensitive to our timeline. This was done in six days, and I don't want to give the impression that 6 days was too quick in terms of hours. I mean, I don't even know where to begin in terms of trying to calculate that, but
sure.
I certainly can respect the fact that you want to know what those references are, but we did accelerate that to be sensitive to the timeline.
So, as has become our practice from time to time, if we were to have a quorum, we could meet maybe on Monday, just for the purpose, one agenda item, to review, to get information about the attorney. Okay. The 25th.
I just want to do subcommittees sometimes. I'm just thinking a little bit backwards, that if there had been a report to us, that we could have had some of this information just even in the outline form, that would have been helpful.
Mary, this was like the lightning round. It went so quickly, and so.
So I would like to have more information and more time to make a decision on this.
Other folks, Leah?
I would definitely support another meeting sooner than later. I think probably by Monday we could secure more information on the references.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is, now that I know who I'm calling for, it'll get done tomorrow. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to add, I mean, there are lots of notes. There's a chart sitting in front of Mike right now. It's not because we didn't want to bring everything to the committee, but it's literally the amount of time. Like, I'm not sleeping. And so to take a couple hours to take the shorthand notes and put them into the form and get them to everybody in time for everybody to review for this meeting would have been great. Personally, it was just beyond my limits. So I mean, I acknowledge that and I recognize it, but yeah, I just couldn't get it done.
So if people want to set up another meeting for this purpose, would the 26th work? No? That's a Tuesday. Tuesday would work? Mike? Joseph? Elaine?
Depending on the time.
It would be after school. Could people do a 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock? What would be folks' preference? Oh, Stephen. 5 o'clock? Okay. 4 o'clock on the 26th. 4 o'clock on the 26th. Yes, then that would be everybody. And it would be one agenda item, and that would be to look at the information, have the questions, present the information. And then I have a Pat question. Oh, hi. Pat. Sorry. No, just if you, yeah, I'm sorry, Pat. Yeah, no, I'm just wondering, so like we're interested in this individual, then we want to hire him. What do we do? What's the okay. Okay. Because I'm wondering if this is our finalist, if he would be available to come on the 25th and meet with the committee. 26th, sorry. Oh, in case we decide we don't want him? Yeah, that wouldn't be good. Okay. So everybody can make a meet. Do we have to vote if we're going to meet or not? No, I don't think. Okay. So we will have it in the... Okay, no, that's not a problem. We can post it, and we'll have it in the school committee room at the Emerson building, 4 o'clock on the 26th. Yes, Leah?
Guys, would it be possible to have an explanation of, or maybe some sort of target prediction on cost?
You get Mike?
So Attorney Norris said that the hourly rate was $220 an hour, and again, on the order of maybe several dozen hours for a time frame if he's just giving a back of the envelope guess.
Okay. Other questions? Now this is pertaining to securing legal services for the investigation. Any other questions or comments for that? So at this meeting, we will have, do you want to focus exclusively on the lawyer that Mike and Elaine are recommending? Or do you want more? Because that's their recommendation. So we want to explore the recommendation, and we want to hear from references and the questions that were asked and that. So that would be one agenda item. Okay? Okay. So now we've sort of strayed from our original motion. Yes.
I agreed with my colleague about data, and we need to be truth seekers in this and not be driven by emotion. I guess my question is, if the language of the motion is not to my personal liking, would I move to table the motion and then withdraw? Someone would have to withdraw the motion. Is that right? I don't know.
I don't either. Yeah. Oh, so wait, Joe was on.
Yeah. He probably could amend them if he wants to amend the motion. He can do that. I think that's the appropriate parliamentary procedure at that point. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So what about the motion that's already on the table?
You're asking me as the parliamentarian. I'm not the parliamentarian, and I didn't bring my rules of order book with me.
Because you made the original motion. Did you so move it? He did. Okay. So the person made. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So should I withdraw? Is that?
I. Yes.
Yeah.
Like to amend your initial motion and then put in, if you have it in front of you or if you listen to it and change the language when somebody seconds it, and we vote on it. Whether we agree with the amendment.
Sure.
Motion is to place the school superintendent on paid administrative leave because there's evidence of wrongdoing and her continued presence would hinder the investigation.
Okay. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Withdrawing the motion, and then proceed with an amended motion.
Okay.
So.
Oh, just amend it. Okay, I'm just going to amend it then. So move to place the superintendent on paid administrative leave based on their continued presence hindering the investigation. And I would like to add that I'm making that motion to exist within the time frame of the investigation only, rather than, as is the case with our high school principal, a leave that was sort of indefinite within the time frame of that investigation.
So we need a second? Who does? Oh.
I will second the amendment.
I thought Elaine just did. She did. Because she had, yes, she had to do it. Elaine seconded the original motion, and so now you second the amendment. Okay. Discussion.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Once again, I apologize. I am thoroughly confused by what the amended motion is, so perhaps either my colleague could either restate the motion, or perhaps the recording secretary could restate the motion.
Well, let Mike he wrote it down. You
Can
want to
I
restate
try
it?
to clarify it?
Well, can you read what you moved?
Well, sure, I can. I just want to make sure that the language is appropriate. Move to place the superintendent on paid administrative leave based on their continued presence serving as a hindrance to an investigation within the time frame of the investigation. And if that needs to be clarified, I can clarify that.
No.
Okay.
Discussion?
Okay, so
Joseph?
I guess we'll go back to my original point. So now what we're doing is the motion has been amended to the point where now we're dealing with this from a purely procedural standpoint, insofar as the motion speaks to the continued presence of the superintendent being I'll call it a chilling effect, that's the term we use in practice of law, on the ongoing investigation. So I think that's where we're at with this. Is that, and I'd like to ask my colleague from
Is
Bolton
that
if
correct,
that's
Mike?
okay.
I don't know what you mean by chilling effect, though. So you'll have to clarify that.
Well,
I don't know what
No. Well, the phrase comes from the fact that purportedly the continued presence of the superintendent would cause individuals to be less than candid and frank in their.
But hindered the investigation. Can we
yeah.
say that?
We could say that.
Okay.
That's not the way a lawyer would say it, but that's the way we say it.
Well, famously not a lawyer. Not a lawyer. Other comments? My comment is that it still is a presumption that something is wrong, that Brooke did something wrong. We have said when we talked about the investigation that should the attorney raise issues based on the investigation, something which indicates that that calls her actions into question, at that point, I would be willing to consider putting her on paid administrative leave. But right now, just because I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with not having any evidence to support putting her on leave. And it comes down to the evidence, direct evidence for me. Leah, Steve? Oh, yes, Leah.
So again, I really liked the idea of just getting a little bit more advice from an attorney as to the effect of putting someone on paid leave absent of evidence of wrongdoing. So you've raised this specter that it could be problematic to do so. And so I would not want to create more liability for the district if in doing something that I am doing so based upon public opinion and not legal advice. So I really do want to have a brief conversation with the attorney so that they could advise us at the very beginning. And believe me, I know you guys all probably agree that if wrongdoing has existed or occurred, of course, we are all going to act in unison. But again, I'm worried about liability. As many of the emails have said, this is a concern.
Okay. Steve? Thank you, Leah.
I call the vote.
So, does that mean we vote? Okay. So, I'm sorry, Leah?
Is it possible to just table the vote until after we speak with the attorney?
Your thoughts? Joe?
I don't know. I really wish I'd brought my book with me because
I do
Steve
too.
has moved to the question.
Mhm.
So
Well, Kevin, do you have any? Okay. 5 minutes? All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Be back at, what is it, 5 minutes and 9? Okay. Oh, so that makes it 8:57. You got it. Okay, thank you. Kevin. Excuse me, I need to ask folks to come to order. We're reconvening. Thank you.
So as I understand it, Mr. Horesh has a motion that's been seconded, and now it's up to the committee to vote. It's just as simple as that. If the vote has been
Kevin, it's hard to hear you.
Sorry. Yes. So if the vote has been moved, which I think Mr. Rubinstein just did after the vote was made and seconded, then it's time for a vote.
Okay. So we are voting on, read the motion again. Anne Marie, could you read the motion? Okay. Yes.
So I just want to be clear about this, okay? So
Talk in the microphone, please, Joseph. Thank you. No.
I don't know which one works. Okay. So just so I'm clear, my colleague from Stow moved the question. I believe that requires consent of the board. I'm not.
Wait.
In other words, my understanding of parliamentary procedure is that one member cannot just say move the question. It needs the consent of the board. So, if the motion is to move the question or call the question, I'm just inquiring: do we need to affirm the motion?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. So I guess my request then would be: would it be inappropriate to at least ask the committee in toto if it's time to move this question, because I want to respect my colleague from Stow also, the young lady over here, who's also put a motion on there to table. So
Steve.
It's my understanding of parliamentary procedure that I'm moving the question. All I'm doing is basically asking for debate to be ended and for people to take a vote on the motion that was made and seconded.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, so without objection, can we declare discussion ended on the motion? Any more comments? Okay. So, Anne Marie, please read the motion again. Yes, yeah, thank you. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you. The vote is 1 for, 6 against. Thank you. Okay. So, subcommittee reports. I know there's no budget and warrant reports, Steve. No, I know, but I think at your next meeting, I think there was a misunderstanding. I wanted the committee to talk about an orientation for the whole committee, not just you guys. Well, maybe we could, in talking about what you guys need, my concern is that there are so many new members on the committee that what do we need to do something different to help people understand the process?
It was my understanding that I was just going to do an orientation kind of thing for the existing members of the committee, subcommittee. But if you wanted me to do it for the whole committee, we've got it scheduled for the second meeting in December right now.
Okay, so no, but you're going to start with your committee and then share with.
Certainly, I can do that. And
okay.
In January we do the budget. We have the budget weekend. So.
Okay, I'm just trying to be sensitive with this. So many new people that.
Well,
yeah.
two of the 3 new people are on the subcommittee anyway.
Okay.
So they will get their orientation the second meeting in December.
Okay.
And if Leah would like to join us, she's certainly welcome to join us. And that will take the new members and give them an orientation on
I
some of
see.
this stuff.
So you'll make Leah aware of when that meeting is.
There's already an agenda put together and was given to a leader about a week ago.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we had personnel. Anything else to add? Personnel? Policy. Leah.
Okay, so we met today, Kathy and I did, to discuss several policies that we questioned at the last meeting. We still have a few of those items that are outstanding. Various people need to get back to us to clarify. And we hope to bring those final sub-parts to you at the next meeting for vote, and that will wrap up the conversation on policy redo.
Thank you. Okay. Consent agenda. Any items for the consent agenda? Or do we have to move to vote on the consent agenda? All right. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Second? Steve? All in favor? Okay. Items to be considered for next agenda. I need to pull it up. I'm sorry. Yes. Yes, but we have one agenda items. So we are looking at, thank you for the clarification. What we are looking at is the December 4th meeting, and I just need a second to call that up. I need a motion to be able to call it up. I see, so here we go. Again, it's meeting materials. All right, I'm there. Planning calendar. So this is what I'm looking at for December 4th. We have legal training with Mike Macaro, and that's a workshop at 4:30. We have the chief recognition, so we're going to do that on the 4th. Okay. Capital plan update. I think Pat would be ready by then. Okay. Building rental rate review. I believe we're ready for that too. Food services. Yeah, we can do that too. Preliminary budget. We're aiming for that. Okay. I don't know that we're a little out of sync right now, so we may need to put that to the next meeting. Okay. It'll be in December. The school committee members that went to the MASS conference, if you could just prepare some brief, focus on one or two things that you really liked and just speak to the committee about them. The 4th. Okay. Could you put the calendar, this discussion of the school calendar, and that's Anne Marie, teaching and learning department visioning. They're ready for that at any point in time. I worry that this is looking like a pretty stacked agenda. Okay, you want to kick it to the 18th? We can move it. Okay, and then the school choice hearing, and we need any preparatory documents for that, if the committee could have those ahead of time. And I want to look ahead, the special education presentation. Staffing update, technology update. Can we do that on the 15th, January 15th, especially? So that gives you guys plenty of time to do your homework. Yep. And then you can do it. Stephen, do you have a question?
Just on this, the spec ed, there was a special education. There was a request earlier in the year on how it's evaluated and what that evaluation is. Are we going to see that at this on this report? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other things? Let's go look at the, yeah, I'm sorry, Leah.
I was going to say that, I'm sorry, I just lost it. But I was going to say that we need to have that one agenda item on Monday, but then at this next meeting, wouldn't we be then discussing the external investigation that is going to then occur and maybe have an update from the attorney or some sort of share out on that day?
Well, let's see. Let's start by actually hiring somebody and then getting information and then presenting it.
I would just like to save some time at that meeting, considering the context that we are all sitting in right now. that is brought back, because I would like to hear, when I said that I want to understand the liability, that was what my no vote just was. So I need more information.
And you want that from the attorney we hire?
Hopefully,
Okay.
so if possible on the 6th.
Okay. Okay. All right. I want to just revisit the. Oh yeah, you're right. Oh, we have to do kindergarten on the 4th. We can't kick it down that unless you want to do it on the 18th. There's only so far we can kick things. You want to do the 18th for kindergarten? The 4th?
Sorry, when are the registration forms?
Oh no, we have to do it the 4th.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
I would be doing it on
Yeah,
the 4th.
we'll do it the 4th. I want to revisit the parking lot. We've got a lot of things we haven't. We've got the regional agreement, school start times, the school calendar evaluation. That'll be December 4th. Preschool extended day fee review. Do we know when we're going to do that?
We're gonna have to do that probably December.
Okay. Discussion on school committee policy on responding to constituents. Unified sports, we did that. Policy, we have to do the policy too. Can you put the policy on the 4th? That should be quick. Okay, we'll just finish up our policy. Special education update, that's going to be in January. And early education update, I'm not quite sure when we'd have that.
That should be sooner than later as well.
Okay. Yes, Mary. Yes. Okay. 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 All right. All right, and we'll work the other things in as we go along. All right, is there anything else for the good of the order? Yes, go ahead, Mary. Okay. Before I entertain a motion to adjourn, I just want to thank everybody for all the hard work you've been doing over the last few weeks and for your overarching foundational concern about the kids of this district. And some of the things that we sort of, mixed into our conversations about hearing from kids, talking to kids. These are things that we need to be able to plan and do, and other things. I'm very concerned about staff members and how they're doing in regard to this. So this is where we would need to have the discussions or to rely on Brooke and Todd's expertise in these areas and to see how we can facilitate it. So again, thank you so much. Yes,
Could
Mary?
I just make one other comment?
Yes.
Just one of appreciation for the engaged citizenry.
Yes.
Who I hope that they would realize that every single email that they sent to the committee, I know every one of us read every single email and appreciate their engagement as citizens, their concern for the children, the staff, administration, the schools, and just to thank them.
Okay. Well said, Mary. Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second. Thank you. Mary? All in favor? Okay. Thank you, everyone.